Recording in progress.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Retail Innovation Summit 2026. Welcome here to this event hosted in Brussels by EuroCommerce with the support of Amazon. It's the premier gathering of European retail and wholesale leaders to debate sector policies, digital fairness, and the impact of artificial intelligence. Now, just for your information, this event is recorded and streamed online. And for the people who are physically here, you were given a badge that contains a QR code. If you scan the code, you will find the full program and the list of speakers and biographies. And you might want to check that because we have a great lineup for you today. Later today, we will host 3 panels where we will discuss the topics in retail. In the first panel, we'll discuss how we can create a level playing field, followed by a panel about how we can empower and protect consumers in the European Union. And in the last panel, we'll take a look at how AI is rewiring retail. We have invited diverse voices to take part in these discussions. But before we dive into those panels, let's see where we already are today. And that will be the focus point of a presentation by the EuroCommerce and McKinsey & Company later on. But to officially kick off this Retail Innovation Summit, let's give a warm welcome to the president of EuroCommerce since 2021. He has led international and family-owned companies along the value chain in various parts of Europe for over 10 years. Mr. Juan Manuel Morales.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Commissioner McGrath, thank you for coming. Members of the European Parliament, representatives of the Member States and the Commission, authorities, colleagues, and friends, welcome on behalf of EuroCommerce. We are the voice of retail and wholesale in Europe. 5 million businesses, 26 million jobs, and 10% of the EU's GDP. I'm delighted to open our Retail Innovation Summit for the second time, with all of you here to listen, to learn, to engage, and to connect. Retail and wholesale are the connective tissue of the European economy, present in every city, every neighborhood, every village, from Lisbon to Helsinki. No other sector is this close to the daily lives of Europeans. We are Europe's largest private employer. We are their 1 in 7 jobs is in our sector. And for 1 in 5 young people, we are their first step into working life. And let us be proud, 5 of the world's top 10 retailers were born on European soil. But today, our competitiveness is under real pressure. 3 challenges stand out. First, rising costs and razor-thin margins. Second, artificial intelligence, already reshaping our entire value chain, yet still hard to turn into measurable impact. And third, unfair competition from non-EU traders who target our consumers without respecting our rules. Let me be direct about one priority that can no longer wait: preparedness. When crisis strikes, and let us be honest, we will very likely see more black swans in the near future. It is our sector that keeps Europe supplied. We keep food on the shelves and essential goods moving when everything else stops. That is not a role we can improvise in the moment. It has to be built, invested in, and secure now, before the next shock arrives. But we cannot do everything at once. We cannot pour capital and management time into resilience while absorbing wave after wave of new compliance. So I will say it plainly: to invest on what truly matters, security of supply, resilient networks, the backbone of a prepared Europe, we need the Commission to pause and pare back the regulation that does not serve our competitiveness. Free up that capacity, and we will direct it exactly where Europe needs it most. Because here lies Europe's great opportunity. We have the talent, the companies, and the consumer trust to lead the next era of retail, to compete and win on the global stage. Our sector is ready to invest in technology, in people, in innovation, in resilience. So my ask to the Commission is simple, and I will not soften it. Put competitiveness first. Complete a true single market. And make our rules fewer, simpler, and smarter. Do that, and Europe's retailers will turn ambition into growth, into jobs, into leadership. Because when it comes to Europe's future, we are one team, one Europe. That is exactly why we are here. We have an outstanding lineup ready to share their insight. So let me keep my own words short, because we are fortunate to have Commissioner McGrath with us. I look forward for the conversations ahead. Thank you and enjoy the summit. Thank you very much again, Commissioner McGrath, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for officially kicking off this summit, Mr. President. Now, consumer protection is at the heart of the European Commission. And what that means on a day-to-day basis is something the Commissioner of Democracy, Justice, the Rule of Law and Consumer Protection knows everything about. Let's give a warm welcome to Michael McGrath.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I thank you, Juan Manuel, for those introductory remarks and for reminding all of us of the scale and the significance of retail in the European Union. 26 million jobs, 10% of GDP. It is important that we do underline the importance of this sector to the European economy. And thank you also for the clarity of your messages to policymakers, to legislators as well. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you to EuroCommerce for bringing together such an important part of Europe's economy here this afternoon. Retail and wholesale are indeed part of people's everyday lives. We all rely on them, but their importance goes much further than that. This sector is, as we have said already, a very major employer. It connects producers and consumers, and it supports communities in every part of Europe. Indeed, its reach, I think, is unparalleled across different sectors. And it is today a powerful driver of innovation, investment, and competitiveness. So when we talk about the future of Europe's economy, we simply have to talk about retail. And today we're not only talking about shops and shelves, we're talking about data, logistics, digital services, platforms, supply chains, AI, and new ways for consumers to search, compare, and to buy. That means your sector is changing fast, and in a fast-changing market, good policy matters more than ever before. Our role in the Commission is not to tell businesses how to innovate. You're perfectly good at that yourselves. Our role is to create the right conditions for innovation. Trust, fairness, clear rules, and effective enforcement. And these are the areas I'd like to touch on today. I'd like to make 4 main points in my remarks. First, retail is central to Europe's growth and competitiveness. Second, businesses need a real level playing field. Third, we need stronger and more consistent enforcement of consumer law. And fourth, we need modern rules for the digital world, including support for businesses using AI. And let me start with the role of retail. Retail and wholesale are essential to Europe's economic fabric. It's where people see whether Europe is delivering, whether prices are transparent, whether products are safe, whether offers are fair, and whether innovation is actually useful. And your sector is incredibly diverse. It includes large international groups, small family businesses and communities right across Europe, specialist wholesalers, high street retailers, and fast-growing online operators. And that diversity is without question a strength. It's also one reason why Europe's retail sector is an important source of resilience in our economy and our society, because when supply chains are under pressure, when consumer behaviour changes, when technology shifts, your sector adapts, and often at lightning speed. In many areas, we see growing innovation today. Retailers are using digital tools to improve stock management, forecast demand, streamline delivery, personalise services, and to reduce costs. And many are now exploring and using artificial intelligence. So yes, retail is about choice and about convenience, but it's also about productivity, competitiveness, and Europe's capacity to innovate. And that's why the right framework matters so much. Second, if we want businesses to invest and innovate, they need to know that the market is actually fair. And today, I think we can agree that that is not always the case. E-commerce has created enormous opportunities, and many of you are fully exploiting those opportunities. It has widened consumer choice, and it has opened up new markets. But it has also exposed some very serious problems that we face. Based on last year's official data, over 15 million small parcels enter the European Union every single day. And behind it lies a real challenge. Too often, non-compliant products reach European consumers, and too often, illegal marketing practices are used online. And too often, the businesses that follow the rules, your members, are competing with operators who do not. And that is not fair to consumers, and it's not fair to the many companies in this room and those watching online that invest time and money to be compliant. Let us be honest. Some third country e-commerce platforms have built market share in part using practices that breach our consumer laws. This trend is bad for trust, bad for fair competition, and is bad for Europe's compliant businesses. So when we say we want a level playing field, that is what we mean. The same rules should apply to everyone serving consumers in Europe, wherever they may be based. Complying with the rules should not be a competitive disadvantage, and enforcement must be fast enough, strong enough and consistent enough to make those rules mean something in reality. Because if bad actors can ignore the rules for long enough, then the market is tilted against honest businesses who constitute the overwhelming majority. And that is exactly what we must correct. And this brings me to my third point of the four. It is the Consumer Protection Cooperation Regulation, or CPC regulation. As you know, the current CPC system allows national authorities to work together across borders. That is important, and it has delivered results. The coordinated actions against Temu and Shein are examples of how the network is addressing serious concerns. But we also have to be candid with each other. The current system has limits, and those are very clear, I think, for all to see. Coordination between national authorities can take a long time, far too long in many instances. And the digital economy, this is a real problem. Markets move fast, business models scale fast, and harm can spread fast. And while authorities are coordinating, some platforms can go on profiting from these practices that harm consumers and that only serve to distort competition in our single market. There is also the question of deterrence. The reality is that so far, no fine has ever been imposed in the framework of CPC coordinated actions. That makes the system less dissuasive than it needs to be. So we need to ask how enforcement can be made more effective, and that's why in the 2030 consumer agenda that I brought forward to the European Commission last year, we announced a revision of the CPC regulation to be brought forward this year. The purpose is very practical. We would like to explore direct enforcement at EU level in specific cases to address large-scale infringements of consumer law. And we will also look at how to improve the current system of coordinated actions. For business, this matters, I know, a great deal. Because stronger enforcement does not only protect consumers, it also protects fair competition, which is fundamental in our single market. It helps cut out unfair operators. It helps ensure that consumer law is interpreted and applied more consistently across the European Union. And it reduces the fragmentation and uncertainty that businesses face when operating across borders. So this is not just a discussion about enforcement. It's also about creating a more predictable and a more business-friendly single market. Let me turn to the upcoming Digital Fairness Act. The digital economy has changed how consumers make businesses, but also how consumers make decisions, but also how our businesses interact with them. But our legal framework has not always kept pace with the unfair practices that can arise in the digital environment. And that's why, in line with the commitment given by President von der Leyen when this Commission was established 18 months ago, we are preparing the Digital Fairness Act. And the aim is clear, and I want to give you a reassurance. It is about tackling gaps in our consumer protection framework in a targeted manner that address unfair techniques and commercial practices that consumers may face online. This will be a horizontal instrument applying broadly across sectors and across different types of traders. Therefore, the Digital Fairness Act is not only about consumer protection, important though that is for sure, it's also about supporting compliant businesses, because it's about making the rules clearer and easier to comply with and easier to enforce. It's about ensuring a more level playing field, and it's about creating the conditions for responsible innovation in retail and e-commerce. The Act will also include a simplification and burden reduction element, because we know that rules need to be workable in practice, and I am determined that this legislative instrument will be both pro-consumer and pro-business, and I believe that it can be. And we can achieve that also by addressing fragmentation. There should only be one set of EU-led consumer law across the European Union, not many different interpretations and methods of enforcement. Another important issue and point that we need to address is child protection. The work on the Digital Fairness Act is progressing in coordination with President von der Leyen's special panel of experts on child safety online. We expect to receive their recommendations as soon as next month, and we will take them into account carefully. Because fairness in the digital world must also mean safety, especially for minors in the European Union. And let me finish with AI. AI is rapidly emerging as a crucial element in the retail sector. It can help with supply chains, inventory, warehousing, forecasting, customer interaction, and of course with direct sales. It can reduce costs and make businesses more responsive. And for consumers, it can save time, reduce search costs, and help identify better offers, so that these are real opportunities. But the businesses also need full clarity on the legal side. What happens if an AI agent makes a mistake? Who is responsible? Who bears the risk? Are AI-driven transactions fully valid? How can a company choose a system that is reliable and user-friendly? These are practical questions that businesses face every day. That is why, under the Apply AI strategy, I've launched actions on AI contracting. By the end of next year, the Commission will issue legal guidance for companies on how to reduce the legal risks linked to AI-driven contracting. This guidance will recommend model contract terms for AI contracts and advice on choosing user-friendly AI contracting systems. We're also setting up a discussion forum with stakeholders, businesses, practitioners and legal experts, so that we can identify the real issues on the ground and we can help to find practical solutions. And I very much hope and I expect that the retail sector will be part of that discussion, because Europe should not only regulate new technologies, we should also help our businesses to use them to their benefit with confidence. So, ladies and gentlemen, retail and wholesale are vital to Europe's future. We can all agree on that for sure. Your sector creates jobs, it drives innovation, and it connects the single market to people's everyday lives. Our responsibility is to make sure that the framework around you is fair, modern, and fit for purpose. That means a real level playing field, stronger and more consistent enforcement, a Digital Fairness Act that builds trust and gives you legal certainty, and it means helping businesses embrace AI while managing the risks that are associated in a practical way. If we get this right, and I believe we will, we can have a market where consumers are protected, where businesses can innovate, and where fair competition in the European Union is rewarded. This is the kind of single market that Europe needs now more than ever, and it is the future that we should build together. So thank you for giving the opportunity to set out those high-level remarks, and I very much look forward to our discussion now. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for those interesting remarks. We'll have plenty of panel discussions about that later on today. Talking about empowering consumers, how do you see the role of retail in that specific area, in the empowerment of consumers in the European Union?
I think it's by continuing to set high standards. I think retail in the European Union sets the highest standards globally, and I think we can be very proud of that, and it's because of the hard work that all of you and your employees do every single day. We all know that trust is hard won but can be easily lost, so maintaining those high standards in every aspect of the B2C, the business to customer relationship, I think is truly fundamental. We have a job of work to do as policymakers and those who are involved in legislation, and hopefully we can come to discuss some of that. But I do believe that if we can ensure that we have an environment where consumers have trust and confidence in European businesses and in doing retail in Europe, I think it will fundamentally lead to more business being done, more consumption within the European Union, and more opportunities for jobs to be created and for businesses to grow and expand. So there are lots of areas we could talk about, but to your question of empowering consumers and how you can do it, I think it is about continuing with those high standards, world-leading standards, and maintaining that trust, which is central to any relationship between the consumer and the retailer or wholesaler.
Is it difficult to maintain those high standards in this competitive market?
For sure, because it's changing so quickly. You operate in, probably one of the fastest moving and most dynamic sectors of our economy. And I can only imagine every day there's hardly time to breathe, because many of you are in high volume businesses and there are problems coming at you constantly. Margins are really tight and you see more costs coming your way, and you see the energy shock again and energy costs going up. So it's really difficult to stand back from all of that, because you have to focus on those day-to-day issues and to look at the bigger picture and try to innovate and to plan what your business will look like in 5 or 10 years' time, when there's so much change, that is really, really difficult. But I think it's why we have to get the policy environment right, and we have to make sure that we do have your back, because of that economic contribution, because of the way that you are serving consumers in the European Union. And I've always held the view that consumer policy is a fantastic opportunity for the European Union to connect with its citizens, because every citizen is a consumer, or even very small children will be consumers very shortly. So it's a great opportunity to connect with people and for people to see the added value of what the European Union can bring, which should be a complete single market. And I agree with Juan Manuel, we don't have a complete single market at the moment, and that's why we are trying to address the fragmentation, break down those internal barriers, open up a true European market for all European retailers and wholesalers, and deal with those barriers that are currently inhibiting our growth.
Does every citizen, every consumer know how well they are protected in Europe, that those standards are so high?
I think in the main they do recognise that consumer protection standards in the EU are high. They have been supplemented in some instances by national laws then as well that can even go further in certain instances. But look, it's like anything in life. It's only when something goes wrong that people will ask the question, well, what are my rights here? And thankfully, in the overwhelming majority of B2C transactions that we see in the retail sector, there isn't a hitch. It goes well. People are happy with their purchase. But we do have to have those safeguards, because if we don't have appropriate regulation and consumer protection standards, then that currency of trust that I spoke about a moment ago will be damaged. And if that's damaged, then the long-term relationship between your brand and your customers is damaged. And we know that that can have a negative impact over time, and we don't want to allow that to happen.
One of the biggest challenges is no doubt the strong and unfair competition from third country marketplaces and traders. But how can or will you support retailers to innovate and invest in such a climate?
So it's over a year now since we brought forward as a Commission the e-commerce communication. And I have responsibility for parts of it, and I have to work very closely with colleagues, which I do every single day, to make sure that the different actions in that communication are being advanced, and that we do so in a coordinated and a cohesive fashion. Because the kind of growth that we have experienced in small parcel imports into the European Union, in my mind, is not sustainable. It creates very real problems, because we see far too many breaches of our consumer protection laws and indeed our product safety standards. And I stand up every year at the Safety Gate report and give examples of products that are simply dangerous to EU consumers, including to children, not just health, but sometimes dangerous to their lives. We simply must address those issues. But also that kind of growth has a direct impact on European businesses. So the first thing we need to ensure is that it is a level playing field. We need to improve the enforcement architecture. That's why, in my mind, the revision of the CPC regulation is absolutely crucial, because the deterrent is just simply not strong enough at the moment. Through this coordinated action that we endeavour to achieve with the CPC network, there are some consumer elements, as you know, to the DSA, but it doesn't have the same depth or reach as the horizontal consumer law framework that we have in the European Union. So that's what we need to strengthen, and that's why that enforcement is absolutely crucial, and I'm determined to get that over the line when we bring it forward later on this year.
Many more questions, but one last question for you. The upcoming DFA is also supposed to simplify consumer protection rules. How do you want to do that? How does the Commission want to do that?
Yeah, I believe there are opportunities, and we have engaged extensively on this. And even if there are still ideas, then please do bring them forward. But we're certainly examining issues such as the requirement for information to be given again and again for repetitive transactions. Can we ease the requirements on that front? The right of withdrawal for certain services, particularly in the digital space, it would be relevant to some of your members, but certainly not all. Under the Price Indication Directive, we are looking at the whole area of food, and certainly not not in any way downgrading the importance of that directive, which is really crucial for consumers to have accurate information about offers and how valid and comparable those offers are. But because of the caveat that we have in the current directive in relation to, let's say, perishable food, we see a lot of fragmentation in the European Union about the application of that. So could we potentially, for example, exclude food completely from the requirements of that directive is another area that is being examined. So there are a whole range of different areas where we believe there is scope for simplification and burden reduction that maintains the quality of the offering to the consumer, but can serve to make life that little bit easier for businesses.
The work is never done, but thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Commissioner Michael McGrath, thank you. Thank you. Now, at EuroCommerce, there's not only a president, whom we heard at the start of this summit, there's also a director general. The DG is the chief advocate for the retail and wholesale sector with the EU institutions, stakeholders and the media, a role she has played since 2021. I kindly give the floor to the director general at EuroCommerce, Christelle Delberg. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for being here with us today. I mean, it's an important conversation that we're having today.
Yes, and we're going to ask a lot of questions. The first ones are coming your way. What's your first response to what the Commissioner just said about what he sees for the future?
Quite a few reflections around the first one is around the importance of trust. Trust in retail. This is the bread and butter. Consumer trust is the bread and butter of any retailer. If you want to remain competitive, you need to be able to offer a great experience to consumers. You need to offer the products that they want. You need to understand what they need. You need to be price competitive. And you can only do that and ensure that consumers will come back to your stores by ensuring trust. So trust is very much embedded in the DNA of in our sector. So that's the first thing. The second one I'd like to mention is the importance of technology and the fast-paced in our sector, fast-paced transformation. And I'd like to share a word of appreciation for how rapidly things are changing in our sector and how rapidly the technology is changing at the face of our sector. Now, the third point is the importance of fair competition. We are competing with technology-driven platforms, but we're not competing on the fair ground. European businesses have to show compliance. We are operate under the scrutiny of consumers, of enforcement authorities. But in the face of the millions of parcels that come every day, up to 20 million every day inside Europe, we cannot compete if the same rules are not applied to everyone. So that's extremely important going forward, having that proper understanding about what needs to be achieved to ensure a fair level playing field in Europe.
Yeah, we heard a lot about that fair competition already and a level playing field because it is so important. But what does your sector need to be competitive vis-à-vis the third country players? What is key here? What do you need?
Enforcement, enforcement, enforcement. So really ensuring that the rules that are there are enforced on everyone, not just on those who operate inside the European Union and that are working based on the very strong and strict European standards, but effectively that everybody is subject to the same rules. So that includes enforcement on the millions of parcels that come inside the European Union every day.
So what are the next opportunities at EU level to do something?
Well, the Commissioner has alluded to a few of them. The first one that we have called for together with the European Consumer Associations and Business Europe on behalf of manufacturing and industry in Europe is the review of the consumer protection cooperation. So ensuring that we have proper cooperation between national enforcement authorities, ensuring that we break the silos, ensuring that there is a faster pace as well in investigation. So really very much into getting everyone on the same page and at the same pace. So that's one. A second one is something that has been a bit long in the coming, is a result of lengthy reflections in our sectors. How do you look at the responsibilities of operators? And we see very much of an opportunity with the upcoming Product Act and the possibility to give or to increase the responsibility for the traders, and if not the trader, then the platforms, to ensure that there is a trader, that there is someone that's responsible for placing the products. So that's what we call the certified economic authorized operator, and it's a discussion that's taking place at the moment, and we very much look forward to seeing progress in that respect. What's very important in the revision of the Product Act is to look at solutions that fit with the Digital Services Act. So that the connections between the various pieces of legislation is extremely important, ensuring coherence between all of them.
I already asked the Commissioner this question, but also to you, of course. How do you think consumers can be more empowered and better protected?
Enforcement.
Enforcement.
And enforcement. So really, if you want to ensure consumer trust, I mean, you need to make sure that the same rules are applied to everyone. That's the basis, and that means that we need to work closely together and ensure that the tools that are there are implemented in a non-fragmented way, in a coherent way inside the European Union.
In a few minutes, McKinsey will present your joint report on how AI is rewiring retail. What's your view on how this will impact the sector? Because it will, and heavily.
Sorry, it will not. It is already. I think AI is already, it's there. And that's what the report is showing. So retailers and consumers, and the Commissioner has said it himself, consumers are already using AI for their shopping experience and their search processes, for example. Retailers are looking into AI as well. There is a huge amount of investment that is taking place at the moment. It goes fast, and the pace of investment goes really fast. What we're seeing, and I don't want to go too fast into the report, is that there is a lot of investment. For the timing, very limited return on investment, so immediate results are slow to come. What's super relevant in the overall picture of retail and wholesale is the competition, is to ensure that European players remain competitive vis-à-vis non-European players that are investing and are leading the competition and are based on AI systems. So what we need, again, is a regulatory framework that supports investments and supports the development of a competitive retail and wholesale sector in Europe.
Thank you, Director General Christel Delberg. We'll see you at the end of this afternoon for the closing remarks after all the things we've heard in the panels as well. But thank you for now. Christel Delberg.
Thank you very much.
Drawing on surveys and interviews with retail executives as well as market analysis, the latest McKinsey & Company EuroCommerce report analyzes how AI is already reshaping the entire retail value chain from consumers to retailers' behavior, and concludes that AI is a key determinant of future competitiveness in European retail, with early and effective adopters best positioned to capture its full value. For the full presentation, here is Holger Harreis, partner at McKinsey & Company.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here and sharing parts of your day with me and with us. Thank you very much to EuroCommerce, not only for having me here on stage and present the results, but most of all for the long-standing collaboration and the pleasure that we've had in doing some of those works over the years and coming up with different reports. Now, what I wanted to do today in just roughly 15 minutes is give you a sneak preview of some of the results that have come up from this special work of research with surveys, interviews of clients, but also a lot of reviews of projects, transformations done by different companies across Europe, and really looking into what the state of play for AI in retail currently is. And given that Xavier has kindly introduced me already, no need to go there. 5 key things I want to share with you today, and I'll go a bit deeper in all of them in a second. Message number 1 is AI, as probably all of you realize, both in private and personal life, is real, but more importantly, it's also table stakes for the industry, and not adopting and in particular not scaling for value really risks insignificance. Secondly, there's a very high number, we estimated above 250 billion euros, that is the price on the table for European retail. We've looked into the different subsectors, into the different domains, and there is differences, nuances for those. The biggest driver, the biggest gains that we're seeing are coming from commercial domains. Yet, as we'll also see, there could be more investments going into it, in particular, more investments that yield a good ROI. That means that every one of you essentially should continue to be prepared to invest more, and in particular, continue to shift investments into technology from the classic areas to AI, and in particular also to data. Now, if we look into what's actually hindering more scale and a better ROI, the interesting message is, although these are technology projects, it's never about the technology alone. It's actually about rewiring, as we call it, the enterprise, changing the end-to-end journeys, reconsidering the operating model, and most importantly, not letting employees alone with new tools that will just stay toys if they can't really use it and deploy it in their everyday lives. So really investing into the adoption, scaling, and the capability building. Now, all of that applies to every part of the enterprise, across domains, across subsectors. But there is one thing that probably is underrepresented if you're just looking at your enterprise alone, and that is agentic commerce, which we believe is likely to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, structural shift since the advent of online commerce. I'll go a bit into this. Yes, it will also depend on where you are, your starting position, the industry. It will be more pronounced for different parts of retail, maybe earlier pronounced for retail than for CPG, but we believe it will have a very, very strong structural effect that we should be prepared for. With that, let us dive in. Number 1, adopting AI is essential. It's important to note, however, that we're all getting uber excited. So in most of the client discussions that I'm having, if you're not having agentic AI somewhere, you're basically perceived as old school and outdated. However, if you look at it, AI has been around for quite a while. It's not been as pervasive and as important, but there are many different flavors. Starting from analytical AI, generative AI, which is basically used for document processing, can create visuals, can create language, to agentic AI, which is a way of deploying AI systems in a more or less autonomous way, interacting like different humans or software systems for that matter would do, and thus being able to use different parts of AI in conjunction as a total system. The point being, all of that can generate value, and the real question just is, what is the highest ROI accretive method for any different type of use case? And that's actually one of the things that I'll come back to later on, being very mindful, being very considerate, and being very sharp in understanding what actually drives the value, instead of just saying, hey, we need to do something with technology, with data and AI. Really asking the question, what will it do to the business? And then considering which kind of technology is best able to actually yield value on that. Now, if we talk about the value, what we've done here is we basically looked across the different domains, starting from marketing and going all the way down to support functions, and we've basically looked at the different economic contributions and clustered it by looking at what is revenue driving, gross margin accretive, and SG&A. We've done that by looking at many of the projects that we've run. We've done it with surveys and interviews, and then basically looked at how will the gains distribute and stack up. It's a very sizable number, and as I said in the beginning, the biggest bulk so far is in commercial and merchandising, which, if you look at how retail is structured and what it does, also makes a lot of sense, right? Because there's a lot of cost, a lot of capital bound in exactly that part of the function. But important to note as well that even in support functions, there's a lot that can be gained. I mentioned there is differences across different subsectors, so we've also broken it down looking into grocery, softline, and hardline, and basically looking at how many percentage points, so this is not relative, but this is percentage points, will this add in terms of profitability. Again, commercial merchandising across all subsectors stands out, but you'll also see that there are some important nuances. Just making the point that it's super important to actually be very, very aware and considerate of where you need to chase which opportunities and with which technology, with which approach. All of that will mean that you will need to continue to invest. What we've done is we've looked at how do the investment distributions differ and stack up across AI high performers that you see on the right-hand side versus all other respondents in surveys. What we're seeing is that 1/3 of the high performers have already pivoted to spending more than 20% of their entire tech budgets on data and AI. Well, you might say, okay, then it's not surprising that they're AI high performers. The real message lies in the fact that they have already done this and they will continue to do so. And so this is also a message about the speed and the new heartbeat of innovation that is taking place. Notwithstanding, not on the graph, but as a separate message, obviously what is happening in parallel is that the overall digital and technology budgets are growing and are roughly somewhere in the range of 2 to 5% of revenue. Now then, why is not everything rosy? Why is not everything great? What we're seeing is that roughly 20% of those projects that get funded and start as a pilot, a proof of concept, a prototype, actually make it into enterprise-grade scaling. Why is that the case? Why are 80% of the investments not ending in the bottom line? The biggest constraint for scaling towards real ROI actually is not technological. The technology is there, it's ready, it can get deployed. The real barriers are of organizational nature, linked back to what I said about rewiring the enterprise. Actually, more than 70%, if you go and do the math along the ring, is related to questions of the organization. Change capacity in the business, unclear decision rights, the funding model, how you allocate the budget. And yes, then there's also stuff around risk, legal, security gating is unclear. How do we deal with this from a regulatory standpoint? We had some of the discussions, we've heard about some of those already. And yes, there's also technological points like legacy architecture that slows deployment or data access and data quality across the domains. And as one of our interviewees for the report said, ultimately winning with AI is above all a question of the culture, the teams, and the ways of working. And if we look into this, what we find is that it's really about, for those who crack the code on value, they follow this logic of looking at the entire enterprise and looking at how to rewire in order to bring the technology, bring data and AI into a position to be value accretive. The orange bars on the left show what AI high performers are doing, how often they are excelling at one of those 6 capabilities, versus in yellow, those in the rest of the respondents across the different 6 fields. And it all starts with a business-led roadmap. really being precise and being very clear about where the transformation should start, how it will unfold, and making everyone accountable for delivering on the value. The biggest, most important layer then is in the middle, making sure that there's the right talent with the right capabilities, that they operate in a model that actually acknowledges the changes that come by technology. So it's not only about deploying Copilot for your daily emails. That might all give us more time for coffee, pets, or whatever. It is about really changing the way of working and embedding data and AI into those processes and changing them as that happens. Yes, it's also about the technology. It's also about the data and AI. What we're finding there is it is about finding the right technology that is fit for purpose to deliver the best ROI on any given challenge. And then a very big contributor, activation and scaling. Having a roadmap that is managed over time. And last but not least, that also reviews what is happening out there and which technology changes are coming and what might need to be reviewed, what might need to be stopped, and where budgets might need to be redirected. Because one thing is for sure, the change and the speed of innovation will never be as slow as today. So we can't craft 3 to 5 year roadmaps anymore. They're outdated even after a fifth of the elapsed time. And let us also look a bit into one of the details of those elements. Here is an exemplary point on the operating model, just looking into details into the time allocation of a merchant and how it actually changes the role and how important it is to stay ahead with adoption and scaling, but also capability building. On the left, you see a typical time allocation in a pre-agentic AI world, where relatively little time, just about 46%, are spent on the real strategic tasks. That's essentially what this lady or guy has been trained for. The rest is spent on management responsibilities that are not value accretive, analyzing prices, assortment, creating the basis for the insights and for the decisions that are more strategic. Now, in a post-agentic AI, actually that massively changes. And now it's also true that the baseline will also change. Overall, this will get more productive. It will overall need less time. But the important message here is that all of a sudden 65 to 80% of the time of a merchant can be spent on what he's actually been trained for, and frankly, what he's probably most passionate about, which is spending time on category strategy, planning, vendor strategy, and management. So really the tasks that drive more value. But what that means is you can't let him or her alone in that. The processes change, the way that technology is embedded in the processes change, and also the interfaces change. So this is real capability building needs and operating model change needs that come our way. And then lastly, if we zoom out a bit and look beyond the enterprise, and we've heard many things already about the structural challenges, the shifts with the million parcels coming to Europe, there is something else that is in the rear view mirror, or I would even argue it's probably even in front of us now, which is agentic commerce. And that can come, or is probably coming already in 3 waves. One is generative engine optimization, that basically looks at how do companies shape brand and product representation on AI scalers. So very bluntly, if you're running your enterprise, if a customer searches on Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT, for whatever your business is, so let's say for a grocery retailer, right, I want to do a meal plan for the week, and what could the recipes be? If ChatGPT comes back with a shopping list, will my brand, will my business be included in that list? I want to be there. Second wave, AI orchestrated commerce. So if I now want to do the shopping event, if I want to get it, to which extent do I let the AI agent actually do this? Automatically compile the basket for me, prepare the shopping list. If it's an online transaction, then potentially even prepare the checkout, and I just need to click on it. Last wave, autonomous commerce. All of them before but I also authorize an agent to complete the sale, the transaction, without me intervening, unsupervised. And we might say, okay, this is vision. Actually, no. This does happen for many of the more recurring purchases. Many of, for example, the white product companies like Miele, Samsung are starting to build in agents into their washing machines so that the washing machine will automatically back order a detergent. Now that fundamentally changes the structures of how we shop. It fundamentally changes the structures of how you all do your business. Because are your produce, are your SKUs visible to AI scalers? And to which extent? Because if I'm an online fashion retailer, do I really want to give all my product data, all my customer data, all my transaction data to an open AI? I had this conversation with a CEO of a client of mine, and once we were done with the discussion, he was basically saying, okay, if all of that plays out in the worst scenario, I'll just be a warehouse with an API. I won't have my customers, I will know less about my products, and I will know nothing about my transactions. And so this is a bit what you see here, right? So one is what I just explained. It can happen on AI platforms, but it can also happen on retail sides. And that is actually the opportunity, right? Thinking through how will the structural shift happen? This is not a technology question. The technology is there. You're probably all using it to whichever extent. It is a strategic question. Where and how do you want to play? And just to put it up with some numbers, we've run different scenarios, right? This could be just a niche adoption. It could be something that passes, right? I mean, we could just all decide as consumers that we're not going to do all of that for shopping, but we're just going to use ChatGPT for some professional questions, legal questions, therapy advice, whatever it's being used for. And then it will be relatively little that agents will do in everyday life. They'll advise, but there is not going to go realistically a lot of traffic to this. It could also be segment adoption. That is currently what we're believing is probably near-term, mid-term happening as the most likely one. And even in that scenario in 2030, 40% of global B2C e-commerce will be intermediated by agents. Right? So roughly half of the business going onto agents. This is only the segment adoption, right? This is not mass adoption scenario, in which basically agents would get embedded in nearly every shopping journey and shopping transaction. A few other numbers. 85% roughly of European consumers, so this is very recent research just on European consumers, are already using AI tools in their everyday life, including shopping. 63% are using it to actually discover products and compare them, brands, models, prices. 55% are using it to then go deep in preparing their decision. And 46% are getting inspiration for the purchases. Now, yes, there's also some that have some considerations around the recurring purchases. It's only roughly 50% who would do this. But figure that, right? 50% of your customers would just go agent, commerce, fully autonomous for recurring purchases. There's more detail on, yes, it's currently skewed towards the discovery, not towards the transaction, not least because mostly the transactions are not automatically possible right now in most European systems. But at least there is a wave coming that can't be ignored. And so if we zoom out back again and look at the different findings across everything, and you'll be able to obviously see the report and go into all the details of the research that we jointly did. But there's basically 5 priorities that come out for us if we look at all the findings as we currently see them. Number 1, it's totally instrumental to anchor AI in whichever form in a clear value map and a clear roadmap for adoption and scaling for you. That is ultra clear on where is it a business imperative, what value will it need, and holding yourself accountable for it so that you get out with real ROI and not just AI everywhere, but in the bottom line. Number 2, it means becoming agent ready with a step change in the data foundations. And that is not only for agentic commerce, that is really across your enterprise for the different domains that I highlighted earlier. And in order to make it value accretive, we strongly believe it really means it's a business transformation and you need to rewire the operating model around AI and not just dump it on your enterprise, dump it on your co-workers and colleagues. However, that also means there's a need to go to a different heartbeat. Projects can't be run anymore by saying, okay, let us first understand what is the need, write a concept, check it back and forth, and then after 9 months, maybe start with the first wireframe prototype that has some illustrations of how the things might look like. By that time, many more buses will have left the station. The new heartbeat is 3 months, real delivery, a real product that is live, test it. If it doesn't work, change, adjust, go on, and continue to build new. And that means, lastly, we all probably need to go through the uncomfortable truth of a very changing environment, of a very changing context in our jobs, and many changing capabilities that we'll all need to learn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now let's head into the first of the 3 panels we'll be having today. In October 2024, EuroCommerce launched a campaign urging the European Commission, member states and national enforcement authorities to step up enforcement of existing rules against unfair competition from third country traders and marketplaces. Against this backdrop, the upcoming panel, composed of senior representatives of EU institutions, businesses, and consumer organizations, will discuss and reflect on initiatives and solutions to establish that level playing field in retail. Now, the panel is moderated by the president of the Czech Trade and Tourism Association, Vice President of the Czech Chamber of Commerce and a Vice President of EuroCommerce, leading also its Level Playing Field Task Force. This is Tomáš Prauza. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As I was thinking, if we try to organize an event like that 3 years ago, there would be a lot of blank faces and nobody would have any idea what we mean by level playing field and why are we talking about this. The campaign started October 2024. I think we gained a lot of traction. Now we have commissioners actually using level playing field in their comments, in their discussions. We're pushing forward, and I think the panel we will be having here is great examples that we're now moving from building recognition into putting together solutions. And as you see, there is so much interest that I will get off the podium so the panelists can actually be there. And with that, if I may, let me invite our panelists. Stefan Tromp, the first one, Deputy Director General of the German Retail Federation, HD. Followed very closely by somebody who I tried to scare last year at the previous Retail Innovation Summit, and I have not succeeded. So Rita Weserbeck is back with us, and as you know, she's the Director of Online Platforms at DG Connect. Somebody that we had the opportunity to talk with recently at the Retail and Wholesale Week in the Innovation at the European Parliament is Felicia Stojka. She's head of unit for market surveillance and DG Grow. Again, one of those to which we simply pushed solving the problem, and I think Felicia is ready for that. Somebody who's been very instrumental in the campaign, in building the recognition, because they have even more troubles maybe than we have, is Agustin Reina, who's Director General of BEUC. And again, this is, I think, a great example when the consumers and the businesses work together very effectively. And of course, because politicians are the masters of whatever needs to be decided. So the best and biggest chair is for Anna Cavazzini. She's there. Thank you very much. And Anna's is a long-term chair of the IMCO committee in the Parliament. So whatever we agree on, whatever we push, she'll be the one to then make sure actually happens. And there's one thing I want to ask you at the beginning. don't talk about the CPC review. We'll do that in the next panel. Okay, don't talk about Digital Fairness Act. We'll do it in the next panel. Okay, so CPC, 1 sentence allowed. The Digital Fairness, maximum of 2 sentences. Okay? But what we will talk about really is DSA enforcement, something that has been a main issue over time. Now we have the first great story to share. We'll talk about the upcoming European Product Act, when we think actually a lot of the solutions can be put into. And yes, there will be interesting discussions, as I'm very happy that DG Grow and DG Connect sit next to each other, because there will be very interesting interactions between these two DGs on the Product Act. And we will want to talk about something we see as a potential solution of a certified authorized representative, because so far, as Crystal said, enforcement, but with a lot of the enforcement we see, there's no pain associated with the enforcement, so that's something we need to change. But first of all, let me try to jointly set the scene of where we are now, and then a second part of the panel will look at where we can move to. And I would like to start with Stefan, because the HD, the German Retail Federation, has done really an in-depth study of the economic and social impacts of situation we talk about. And very often we see this discussion being considered like, oh, you bet retailers want to take cheap goods from my voters. And it has been very hard to describe what the impacts are. But Stefan, you have tried. And what were the main conclusions?
Yeah, we have tried. Good point. But first of all, I would like to say thank you very much, not only to EuroCommerce for your campaign level playing field, also to European Commission, because a lot of things has happened in the last 3 years. And we will see some actions which will take place and will be enforced mid of this year. And first of all, thank you very much for hearing us. Thank you very much for taking action, first actions, and we hope that more will happen. Yes, in Germany, we have tried to find out what is a real economic impact of unfair competition through third-party platforms. And we have asked an economic institute, EuroCommerce, that's a daughter of the German Institute of Economics, to calculate the economic impact. And just 3 figures. Through this unfair competition, we lost around about 5 billion euros turnover, not only in retail, also in other related sectors. A margin loss of 2.4 billion euros, and we lost around about calculated 40,000 jobs. Only due to unfair competition, due to the fact that we are not able to enforce our regulation against every market participant. And as Crystal de Berg and our EuroCommerce president, Jan Morales, said, enforcement is what we need. I think we don't need new regulations. What we need is really that the existing one, really consequent, is put in place and everyone has to follow. That will be the best help for really a fair competition in our market.
Stefan, thank you very much. And Rita, you actually tried the enforcement. You tried to do that, just issued a 200 million fine to Temu. This was the first time when I was happy that Czechia does not have a euro, because I could say 5 billion Czech crowns, so that's even more impressive in Czechia when you come. But again, this has been a very long process. There's one of the players, the one which is most visible, but definitely not the only one. So again, if there's one key lesson you learned from the process, and then what are the other things you can do under the DSA?
Sorry, I can a bit explain. So indeed, we adopted 2 weeks ago the decision with respect to Temu, where we imposed a fine of 200 million euros. It's the second fine under the DSA. The first fine was for X half a year ago. So, and this fine was for the fact that the risk assessment that Temu had to submit to the European Commission in 2024 was, in our judgment, really substandard. So it did not meet the expectations that are justified on the basis of the law for such a risk assessment. And elements of that assessment were that So they relied in particular on general market information, not on information concerning their own company. Also, there was a whole series, and partially also maybe of bodies who are here in the room, of studies who pointed to very high percentages of non-compliant products. And still, they came to the conclusion that there was a low risk of non-compliant products. Then the Commission did its own study, a mystery shopping exercise that also came to very high percentages of non-compliant products. And we relied on the PCA, so the customs authorities' work, and the study of the data that are collected by the market surveillance authorities in a database called ICPCS, that all pointed to very high percentages of illegal and non-compliant products. And we said, under those circumstances, Temu cannot come to the conclusion that there's a low risk for those products on its website. So we imposed this fine. This is based on the nature of the infringement, of the gravity, and the duration. And the consequence is the fine needs to be paid, and then Temu needs to hand in an action plan, so basically its intentions that meet the expectation of the Commission expressed in the decision on how to change this. So that should logically then result at least in a much better risk assessment in 2026. Now, if I still may, one of the reasons why we imposed what we think is a serious fine is because the infringement was particularly serious. And this is because this risk assessment is a cornerstone under the DSA for the very large online platforms, so the large online marketplaces also. And this is because it allows us and the digital services coordinators, but also everybody else, because it's public, to assess where are the risks in the analysis of the platform itself. And it allows then also to assess what are the measures that the platform systemically takes. So this is really the manifestation of the systemic analysis that takes place under the DSA, and it forces the platform to change its systems, not only the individual products, but the systems that it has in place to make sure that the defective products don't even get onto the market. This is the background of this case. And maybe still to add, it looks like a lot, it is a lot, but we should not forget that there are a number of additional elements. So we have not yet finalized our analysis of the dissemination of illegal products. So this is how effective are the measures that Temu put in place to avoid the systemic appearance of illegal products. This is still being investigated, could lead also to preliminary findings. We are investigating addictive design of the platform and also a number of other more marginal issues.
Really, thank you very much for that. I think you've very rightly described it. It's about systemic issues. It's not also only about goods. It's about the way of the sales process. It's about marketing, data protection, all of these. So I think that's very important for everybody to understand that you're not stopping at this one investigation where we have issues. But we've also seen that our third country friends are very clever. They know how to play the system. So I think that that's also why I understood the discussion that you try to do as much as you can with the DSA, but we also need to put much more focus on the products being introduced on the European market. And it's always been a discussion with Felicia. Well, we're always saying we want to make sure that the only compliant products will be introduced on the European market. It's much easier said than done, but with the European Product Act, will it be easier?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I think here we are kind of looking from two angles. We are looking on a short term what we can do because of the magnitude of the issue, and we have a mid-long-term dimension. On a short term, we are working extremely closely with colleagues from DG Connect that actually to get to the Temu fine, we know they worked around the clock to feed with the data we have from the market surveillance investigations, and we do much more on joint actions, etc. But of course, now the focus and rolling our sleeves as we speak now, it's about the European Product Act and how we can come up with a proposal that is, I would wouldn't call it ambitious that much, but a proposal that could address the issues and the magnitude of the problems that we have today, the impact on the single market. And here, of course, we have mapped kind of a wide range of solutions, and we will bring forward a toolbox that, in our view, could address the problem. Because looking at the enforcement, of course, enforcement is split, as we call it in the single market strategy. First line of defense is the customs, and we have now the custom reform that has been approved. And then the second line of defense, which is market surveillance. And there we are going to come up with more kind of options and measures to ensure there is better coordination and cooperation among the almost 1,000 market surveillance authorities across the EU. And just to beef up and ensure some efficiency gains in terms of how we enforce on the ground. But more importantly, and to come straight to your question, relates to the regulatory framework, the so-called authorized representative, where we need to admit we have a loophole in our system, and this is what the European Product Act will do to address. So first, we are going to build a EU registry for all authorized representatives in the EU that will represent third country manufacturers and products that will come to the EU, and especially those that come straight to the consumers via e-commerce channels. Then we'll be able to verify their identity through this database. We will be able to see that there is actually a contract or a mandate between this EU-established economic operator and the third country manufacturer. And last but not least, because these 2 points can be checked by any shop across the street, we need also to make sure that they have responsibilities and a role that could play in front of market surveillance authorities when they will check information respective to the product they represent. And here we want to leverage their roles and responsibility to those of importers. So in our kind of jargon, let's say in EU product framework, we say that they will become manufacturers de facto for the products they represent. What does this mean? It means that if a market surveillance authority will suspect a product of non-compliant, will easily identify who is the authorized representative for that respective product in the database, will be able to reach out and will be able to retrieve the technical file and the results of the safety test and so on and so forth. So this is where we are trying to close, and how we are trying to close the loophole of the authorized representative. But then, as I said, enforcement, first line of defense, second line of defense, but then enforcement takes time. And indeed, colleagues from DG Connect, they have done a great job, because looking at the procedures, right, in the DSA to come up with such a decision, it was quite fast, but still it takes approximately a year, more than a year. The statistics we have and the data for 2025 will come up soon. We have almost 6 billion products in 2025 coming through e-commerce imports in the EU, and this is almost 300% increase compared to 2022. What does this mean? It means that per year we have approximately 2 billion products coming through e-commerce into the EU. A year that for us it takes to enforce the legislation. So what we try to do, and that's why we are trying to work very closely with colleagues in Connect and also Legal Service to see how much we can stretch and how much we can propose measures first that would be within the frame and the limits of the DSA, so to complement the legal framework we have in place today. And of course, we look together the existing jurisprudence and how to sort of put some responsibilities on the platforms that they accept only products that are, let's say, compliant with the EU law. And here, the digital product passport will play an important role.
Thank you. And again, as you said, we're closing loopholes. Frankly, I think nobody can imagine 6 billion packages. It's a number nobody understands. So I always translate into 190 packages every single second. So I think that, keep that in mind, that's the volume. And this is absolutely impossible to enforce. And again, when we keep loopholes open, there are clever solutions. I remember about a year ago, we convinced the Czech Customs Authority to pay more attention to the planes landing from China in Czechia. They started going through the products, And within 5 days, the planes stopped landing in Czechia and started landing in a neighboring country. So even so, when we even push for enforcement, it must be uniform. And I think, Agustin, you must have the same experience and looking at either DSA enforcement, or even trying to even talk to the consumers on how they should respond. So what do you think has been effective so far?
So first of all, thank you very much for having me. Really a pleasure to be part of this conversation, which we already have had many of them, and that also shows the urgency of the matter, both for the European industry, but also for consumers alike, also for the environment. If you think that a lot of these products that are being bought end up in landfills and there is very little circularity in it. When you look at it from the point of view of the consumer, what does it mean when we talk about a level playing field? That basically something very simple, is that the products that you bought, that consumers buy, are safe, no matter where they come from. And that should be the basic premise. And when you ensure that products are safe is when companies can compete on the merits, when companies can gain consumer trust. The problems that we observe is that consumers are not aware. So when consumers buy, let's say, a jacket online, they will not expect to have full of PFAS. And they should not be worried about that in the first place. And just to give you a very concrete example, because we're talking about jackets, there was, for example, testing by our members, that they bought rain jackets online through all these marketplaces, and then they bought it in the brick and mortar shops. Guess which ones had PFAS? So they were those bought online. Of course, people are not aware of that. There is no single responsible parent that is going to buy a toy that can suffocate a kid, no matter how cheap it is. So we are facing a competitiveness crisis, but also a safety crisis that is fueled by the fact that people are not aware what they're buying. Of course, consumer organizations play a role in creating awareness, but the scale of the problem is so big that it cannot be put only on the shoulders of consumers alone. And that is where the role of the decision makers is so important. If we look, for example, at the work of the DSA, this is fundamental, because Temu was failing to do something so basic as checking whether they have sufficient mechanisms to ensure that the products are safe. We're not talking about yet looking at the product themselves, which we have already done. It's about what are your safeguards that you impose yourself as a company in order to comply with the law. So if they cannot ensure even that, how can we guarantee that the products are going to be safe? And then, of course, when we look at the overall regulatory jigsaw, as we call it, of course, the DSA is extremely important for what the DSA is for. But then there are other areas of law that will play an important role. We have been engaging in enforcement quite a lot lately, submitting also complaints either to the Commission via the DSA or using the CPC external alerts. And we also realize what are the limitations on enforcement. The DSA and the DMA, they offer good models because there is a centralization of enforcement, so addressing European problems with European solutions, but there are other areas that we still need more progress. I'm not going to talk about the CPC, but this is one of them. And certainly when we look at market surveillance, the same thing. And it's not about making one set of authority responsible. Here there is a shared responsibility, there is a shared accountability. You have the digital service coordinators and the Commission for the DSA. We have the market surveillance authorities. We have the consumer protection authority. We have the customs. So none of them alone can address the issue, but all of them together in a coordinated manner, well.
And I think you're absolutely right. What you mentioned is centralized enforcement. Because what we see, some member states more active than the others. It's very easy to misuse the loopholes. So I think whatever we'll be discussing, and one of the first things we'll be saying, more power to the Commission. May not make us liked by some of the national politicians, but I think this is what we actually need to have an effective enforcement. Anna, you've been chairing the IMCO committee for almost 6 years now, if I remember correctly, and that is the committee for the discussions we're having. If you look at the situation right now in the Parliament, what are the things that can be done now before we have the Product Act and some of the changes?
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. And normally it's the other way around. EuroCommerce is in the parliament, so I'm happy to be at your conference, but in a similar configuration, I guess, because also the Commission is often in our committee, because indeed everyone who observes a little bit the discussion in European Parliament noticed that it's a big, big priority for the IMCO committee, and I would say for almost all the political groups. And that's why, for example, we were the first committee going to China after the sanctions against the European Parliament had been lifted, because of the e-commerce topic and the unfair competition that our companies are facing and our consumers are facing with unsafe products. And also, and this is, the two Commission colleagues know this very well, we have also now, since January, a recurring topic on our agenda where we every committee meeting scrutinize one of the mostly Chinese, but also other e-commerce platforms and ask the Commission also questions on what can be done to properly enforce our rules, because we can just completely align with everything that you said, and of course also that you said from a business point of view. It's a drag for the consumers, it's a problem because we have too many unsafe products, we have unfair competition, and I think everyone in the European Parliament wants to solve this. I'm not sure, and that's why we also talked about new regulation, if we can do it without new regulation, because sometimes new regulation can also increase the enforcement. You know, I mean, you know what I mean? And I guess this is also what we're discussing right now, because of course, yeah, we have the Digital Service Act, and I'm so happy that the Commission is now also speeding up enforcement after we put a lot of pressure on the Commission. No, this is our perception, sorry. And I'm also so happy that, for example, stakeholders like EuroCommerce are also actively, you know, constructively thinking about solutions, like stepping up the authorized person, and that the Commission is following through. Because, for example, I remember in the last term, we had already this proposal on the table. For example, we as Greens in the product safety regulation wanted actually that, but we lost it in the Parliament because the debate, the problem was not there yet. And now I think everyone agrees that there is a problem. And I'm very happy that we can now come to better solutions. And I can just say in general, I think almost all the political groups are really on that, and I think this is very good news.
Thanks a lot, Anna. And I think you're absolutely right. I think when we started discussions, it was about perceived that one part of retail is fighting another part of retail. I think when they stepped in, I think that changed the discussion significantly. And in the analysis, what Stefan was mentioning, it's in the end about jobs. 40,000 jobs in Germany lost. I think if you extrapolate, you'll be talking about 120, 150,000 jobs in Europe lost. And I'm not sure, even if we change things now, whether any of these jobs would come back, or we only stopping the bleeding. But Stefan, if you could have any wish you wanted to actually push for the level playing field and make sure the situation improves visibly, what would these priorities be?
If you have a wish, or stay in dangerous ground. No, first of all, also thank to you and your colleagues, especially that you really address your concerns in China directly. It is also necessary really to make it clear that we not accept this kind of doing business. And if you compare Chinese behavior in the domestic market and what they send to Europe, totally different story. But besides, I really appreciate also your plans, this database and connecting the different sectors and so on. What I would like to bring back in mind is there is no single agreement between the European Union and, for example, China. We are not able today to execute our rules against a Chinese market participants directly in China. And we're always thinking about rules which we can execute in the European Union. And if I have a wish, my wish would be that every, maybe Chinese trader, or it doesn't matter, from a third party, must be registered, must have a representative in the European Union which is solvent. So if something goes wrong, that we can really keep this representative. I said, okay, you have to pay the fee, the penalty for this Chinese trader. And if there is no representative in the European Union, no parcel piece should be sent any longer into the European Union. that we find really a way in general to execute our rules directly to these third-party market participants. That is our gap that we have to solve in the future.
Thanks, Stefan. I think the key word you said, a solvent representative, not formal representatives. We had too many of the formal representatives, but somebody who can feel the pain if the problem is there. And I think the second thing strategically we should also aim for is that we try to motivate our Chinese friends towards bulk shipping from Europe. Okay? They are not afraid of losing one package when they find a dangerous toy. But if they would be in danger of losing the whole consignment somewhere in Europe, not one product, but 1 million products, I think they would also behave very differently. So that's, I think, another part of the solutions. But Rita, going back to you, continuing this wish list of things, I was wondering, because we have the DSA, we're talking about the European Product Act. So how will they actually link together? That's one question. And the other one, I don't want this to be that we're asking you to do stuff. So you're also free to tell us what you need from us. Okay?
Okay, so these are very nice questions. I was already thinking of my wish list, but it's actually almost your question, because I mean, on my wish list would be that we find a good solution for the interaction between the DSA and the Product Act. Because, I mean, we are hearing loud and clear the call, like we need somebody who's liable and representative in the European Union for all those products. At the same time, the DSA applies to intermediaries, so to platforms. And this is a very firm construction across the board, in the sense that the one who operates the platform is not liable for the products that are on the platform. That's a kind of universal rule that comes from case law in Europe. It's also in the United States, a very firm rule. So basically, a platform is not liable, can be liable if it is informed that there's an illegal product, and if it then doesn't act expediently. So, but in principle, the platform has a different kind of liability, which is the liability for the organization of the platform. So this is what we hold the platforms accountable for. Now, the thing that Felicia and I are struggling with, and we need to hopefully come up with proper solutions, is there a way that you can apply both? Because what we see is that, it may be a very good solution to have liability, of at least one entity for all the products, but we're talking about listings of 20 million products or more in Europe. And so the question is, how will that be managed? Because, I mean, will it really be effective if the market surveillance authorities will have to go to court or have to adopt orders product by product? So we're not sure how it will work. And in that sense, it is really important that, as we see it, that this systemic responsibility of the platform to have its house in order and to have a proper analysis of where the risks are for illegal products, have content moderation in place, have checks and balances in place, have enough content moderators, have penalties in place so that the rogue traders don't reappear, and so that we can see when we're testing their solutions that effectively the number of illegal products goes down substantially. So what I would like is that these systems can exist alongside. And for the moment, that is a very difficult challenge to solve.
Indeed, very difficult. And also, I think part of it is also for you to be able to communicate the findings, I think, even more actively. I know it's always an issue of resources. It's politically very complicated. But I think part of it, I think Augustine will get to that, is also, education of European consumers, because sometimes they don't see anything besides the price. So I think we need to tell them there is a systemic problem. But Felicia, that when we started about with the level playing field, diagnosis was easy. I think we greatly understood what the problem is, but also even among ourselves to try to agree on a solution took some time. And I think what we believe in that what we really need is an effective authorized representative, somebody, and as Stefan said, somebody who has the resources, who has enough money in his bank account and can lose that money if there are systemic problems. So we came up with the proposal of this certified authorized representative, somebody who needs to prove he or she can be the authorized representative. I know we've been bothering you with this idea for some time. Do you like it at all?
No, it's not only that we like it, I think we are aligned, fully aligned on this one. And that links also to Stefan's wish list. Because on the one hand, I've already explained, right? So we are working on the concept of authorized representative to beef it up from all kind of angles, including financial coverage, which I omitted to say. And we are going to redesign the architecture of Le Connoisseur Article 4 of Market Surveillance Regulation, which actually lists who is the EU responsible economic operator in the EU for imported products. And currently we have manufacturer, okay, if there is no manufacturer, we have an importer, we have an authorized representative or fulfillment service provider. We are going to change that and to say when there is no manufacturer, we are going to have either an importer or an authorized representative, full stop. So we are trying kind of to modulate the legal framework on the business models and the supply chains, right? Because we have B2B, which is largely for an importer, and B2C, where we have, let's say, Chinese, Indian manufacturer or seller sending directly to the consumer. So therefore, the EU established operator does not touch per se the product or has its own distribution channel as an importer. So this is how we are going to redesign. And I'm looking here, Ms. Cavazzini, we are going to be bold and we are going to expand the coverage. We have currently only 14 sectors covered by authorized representative. We want to expand that to 70 plus, the whole spectrum of the legal acts that are covered by the market surveillance regulation. And then one element which I think is extremely important in this discussion is the digital product passport. The European Product Act aims at stopping the fragmentation of the digital product passport that started with the SPR. Then digital product passport was so successful that it has been taken up by toys legislation, by detergent, construction products, and so on and so forth. So we are going to create, through European Product Act, a single European framework for digital product passport that will do two things. One, it will embed automatically through this new regulation a digital product passport for 31 legal acts across the new legislative framework. So here I'm talking about electronic products from smartphones to tablets, computers, etc., to machines, robots, lifts, name it. So it's a huge range of products that are under the scope of the new legislative framework that will have a digital product passport with European Product Act. And then we are going to provide sort of the case or the sort of the foundation, the matrix, so that any future sector that would want to take up the digital product passport will rely on the European product. What does this will do in practice? A digital product passport will have a database at the EU level, which is called registry. So this is, it will be through a QR code. We will be able, all of us as consumers, but also market surveillance authorities, to have access in real time to product compliance information, meaning who is the manufacturer, who is the distributor, what standards have been used. The so-called declaration of conformity will be digitally accessible to everybody through this digital product passport. And this is where we will be able to see who is the manufacturer of a certain product that has a QR code for the DPP, who is the authorized representative, and moreover, we can scroll down to see who are the authorized representative for a specific model of a product, and so on and so forth. So it's pure digitalization for product compliance, showing transparency, but also helping with the accountability for market surveillance authorities. Now, digital product passport, of course, we see it like the holy grail for transparency in the supply chains for products. It will not happen overnight. So now colleagues are working on the implementing act to set up the registry for the batteries delegated act, which is the first one to come. So we are going to have this registry, a single platform for all DPPs in February next year. And then we are going to test the system and see and take a gradual approach also to help industry. Of course, this is on top of our mind, how to can make this as least painful for the industry, because in the end it's a decentralized system, so the core of information will be with the companies.
least painful is great, functional would be sometimes enough. And again, be ready to consult in any way you need. Okay, we've seen it now with the packaging and packaging waste regulation, which disrespects some business models, creates a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy. So again, whatever you need, just ask. And you know, sometimes it's very complex, so I think we're open to do anything we can. Agustin, I think just like Stefan, you also allowed a wish list, focusing, I think, on the European Product Act, but maybe also a second wish list on how to communicate better towards consumers and to explain to them the dangers they might be facing.
I think a common wish here is we want to have an ecosystem where consumers can access safe products. And product safety is not a luxury. We know that consumers and household budgets are very tight right now. We are facing yet another inflation trend across Europe. And that, of course, offers a huge opportunity for these platforms because they are selling extremely cheap products. And to a household that is on a tight budget, of course, they will look at the price. What they don't see, however, is what is the price behind that you're buying. That could indeed put at risk your health, your safety, so on and so forth. So while we can focus a lot on making consumers aware of that, no, that is not going to solve the financial situation. No? But this should not become also an excuse to let these companies off the hook. And I think that's really important to be very clear about that, because compliance has a cost, but has a cost for a very good reason. No, it's for a very good reason why we decided to remove lead from consumer products. It's for a very good reason that we have standards for children's car seats. It's for a very good reason that we have very clear rules when it comes to standardization of safety for electronics. And when we see what is coming through the mail, it is something that is simply not acceptable. We cannot have a two-tier society in Europe where those that cannot afford it to buy in a shop here in the high street, they need to buy a product that might put their integrity at risk. And I think there is a very important political choice that needs to be made. And it's a political choice that is behind every enforcement action, being from the point of view of the DSA, CPC, so on and so forth, and of course, on the design of the upcoming EU Product Act. Now, when it comes to the concrete approaches and how to solve this, of course, there are different views about how to accommodate it. But as I said before, it is not one single law that is going to make the trick. It's the combination of all these laws that will help to reduce the influx of non-compliant products. Of course, we want to have open markets. No, I think that despite the complex geopolitical situation in which we are living, Europe has open markets, and we're willing, to trade, but on an equal footing. And that also means that either with the DSA, which is already being enforced in an effective manner, we need to look together at how we can have also a better traceability of these products, because by creating that traceability, as it was explained by Felicia, you can also create incentives for the platform to have products on the websites which are compliant. Of course, there is a technical legal question that needs to be addressed, which is on one side technical, but the other side is also political. No, when we call technical, in the sense that it is not about imposing a general monitoring obligation on the platform, but it's also about having a stick to make sure that the platforms do their job. And those selling through the platforms, that they know that their products are not going to reach consumer households. And there is also a political question, which is about how big do we want the stick to be. And I think what we have seen so far is we don't have a stick that is big enough to be deterrent for these platforms to do a better job.
Thanks. And it's interesting, actually, when you said political question, everybody look at Anna. Okay, it's a political question. Yeah, but I think you're right when you said it's now growing interest, growing understanding in the European Parliament about the issue. And I remember when we organized a few months ago in the European Parliament the Retail and Wholesale Week, we actually started with a breakfast on level playing field. It was 200 people showing at 8 in the morning to discuss that. So I think that showed that there is that interest. But again, there will be some of the files, European projects coming your way very quickly. Again, what can we do better to make sure that the proposal will not be watered down or overburdened with bureaucracy? How can we help you push it effectively through?
No, excellent question. I mean, I think in the European Parliament we are desperately waiting for the proposals because, of course, and like it was mentioned before, we have already good legislation in place. And I can probably also just mention again, you talked about the bulk, but the customs reform that we just finished and that we negotiated, and also I personally negotiated over like 4 or 5 years, I don't know, will have definitely also an effect because with the €3 and some other incentives to go away from these individual packages, to go back to bulk, to have a risk-based control at the borders, and finally some European data hub and not 27 customs data. I think that will already improve a lot. And of course, we have already introduced some, it's not platform liability, but we have introduced already some more responsibility of importers of products to make sure that their products are compliant, but still we need more. And we talked about the different solutions, and I would also say, if I listen to the discussions we're having in European Parliament, if I look at the resolutions we did, a lot of the topics you mentioned, like the digital product passport, that will also have, of course, not only a compliance and enforcement issue, but also a single market simplification point, I would say. I mean, I get already some companies complaining, little ones in my constituency, that say it will be again, bureaucratic burden to do a digital product passport, but at the end, I also try to explain them, at the end, it's easier. It will be easier once you do it. You anyhow collect the data, just put it all in one single thing, and then it's there, and then it's easier. But I think there, probably it could be interesting also for you to explain to your members, to explain to the companies that it's not an additional burden, it's actually simplification, I would say, and that it's also helping the single market, similarly to the authorized person and increasing and step up. We have, as you know, in the European Parliament voted on a very comprehensive resolution on the NLF reform that goes also beyond e-commerce. It also has actually single market aspects in to say, okay, we want, for example, a single definition of repairs and refurbishers to also make sure we have a more integrated but also greener single market. So there are some very good proposals from the European Parliament. And of course, I would say similarly to the consumer organizations, a lot of MEPs want also more obligations for the e-commerce platforms. For example, better check before, like, how do you call it, ex-ante checks before the products are put online, a faster obligation to take illegal products down, more tests, more mystified shopping, whatsoever, so make sure that really we grab all the unsafe products from the e-commerce platforms. Because at the end, I think that will also help companies that comply with the rules and will weaken a little bit those that are not complying with the rules. And for that, of course, it would be amazing to have also all the stakeholders on board. Yeah, because legislative processes are complicated and there's a lot of different interests. And I'm also having a huge interest in getting these pieces of legislation fast and smooth through the Parliament.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great message. Better enforcement and simplification can make it all faster and not complicate the businesses, the legitimate businesses at all. So I was thinking that when we planned Retail Innovation Summit 2027, whether we will still need a level playing field. My wish is we do not need the level playing field. Maybe next year we still will. But I think we'll be much farther along the discussions, the proposals be on the table. There might be a few more DSA decisions. So I think, yes, we're moving forward. And also I was very happy, Rita, Felicia, Anna, to you, that you also gave some tasks back to us. And this is, I think, what we work on with Ilya, with the whole level playing field task force. So again, with that, let me thank you very much for being with us. Anna Cavazzini, Agustin Reina, Felicia Stoica, Rita Wezenbeck, Stefan Trump. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
And thank you to Thomas Brausa for the careful moderation of the first panel. 2 more panels coming up, and the closing remarks of Christel Delberg. But that is after the networking break we have, coffee break, whatever you want to call it. It's over there where you had the lunch. We'll see each other in 15 minutes back here.
Check, check, 1, 2.
Hello and welcome back after that coffee break or the networking break, however you want to call it. We have two more interesting panels lined up for you. The next panel will be about empowering and protecting consumers in the EU. And this panel will examine how to strike the right balance between robust consumer protection, innovation and fair competition. And the discussion will also look at two key upcoming initiatives, the review of the Consumer Protection Cooperation and the Regulation and the Digital Fairness Act, both expected in the last quarter of 2026. Now, these offer an opportunity to address emerging challenges, including harmful online practices and the growing presence of non-compliant third-country traders and marketplaces, targeting European consumers. I'll be the moderator of this debate, and the people who are in the panel, I would like to kindly ask them to join me on stage. Isabelle Perignon, Director of Consumers at DG Just. Yes, you can join me. That way. You can come all the way here. Pablo Arias Echeverria, an MEP and member of the IMCO committee. For people who ask what I do here, I host a consumer show on radio and television for the public broadcaster VRT. And one of the smart people we interview a lot is the next woman on the panel, Els Bruggeman, Head Advocacy and Enforcement for EuroCommerce. Also on the panel, Mariangela Marcelia, Vice President of Amazon European Stores. And Matilde Garcia Duarte, President of Anget. I also will disappear here on the front row, because otherwise you'll get a sore neck from just looking at me when I'm over there, and you need to look at the people who are here today. Welcome to all of you. Isabelle Perignon, what is the Commission doing to empower and better protect consumers online?
So good afternoon to everyone. We have everything here in actually in our 2030 consumer agenda. So that's really our strategy and our vision of what we want to do to help consumers in the coming 5 years, what are our plans, our vision of where we see consumer protection. And you heard already this afternoon, Commissioner McGrath who came, delivered the keynote speech. And you can see that for us, what is important is that we help consumers, and empower them making the best choices. And we have to, in that perspective, also prepare what will be the future of our work this year, which is the Digital Fairness Act and indeed the revision of the CPC regulation. But we will come afterwards.
And why is that so important, to empower and better protect the consumers?
Well, because we need to make sure that we have them being fully aware of what are their rights and be in a position to buy without being, misled or without a lack of transparency, be in a full possession of their rights so that they can make informed choices.
But they already can, I can imagine, but things can always get better. Is that the main focus?
Yes, and when we, for example, are preparing now the Digital Fairness Act, I guess that you saw and you heard the discussions that there are new challenges coming. So you always have to think with what is happening on concretely on the market to see if then the legislation that we have at the disposal of the consumers is enough. What do they need more to make these choices, in full conscience? And in this consumer agenda, I'm sure you all read it, but in this consumer agenda, what is really important is that we need, indeed, as regulators, to adapt ourselves to the new challenges that we see on the market. Not always easy, but that's the objective of the Digital Fairness Act.
Yeah, and that's a vision for 2030, I think it's on the cover?
Yes.
Yeah, and beyond 2030?
Well, it's already quite a lot, So for 2030 and beyond 2030, it's difficult to predict that will be the tendencies of the market. I have more a very pragmatic approach, trying to focus now on what will be the next 5 years.
Yeah, that for the Commission, of course, the European Parliament also weighing in on the discussion. Pablo Arias Echeverria, as an MEP, how do you contribute to empowering consumers in the Parliament?
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you for this invitation. First thing is that we are in a weird world. This is Brussels, it's raining, it's 13 degrees. In Spain, we have 35 in Madrid, and my kids are in the pool swimming and playing. So we have so many differences. What can we do as an MEP? Well, Commission, Parliament, we have many differences, but we're aligned in this. I think that we have to do something and to enforce the current legislation that we have, and also to make sure that in the next steps, we do the right and the proper thing. But and when I express in English, I need to read sometimes because my English is not as good as Isabel's, but I will try to do my best. What matters most to the consumers is trust and predictability. This is what institutions must provide through legislation, but also through the effective implementation of the legislation. The EU has worked hard to ensure a high level of consumer protection. As a result, Europe has become a global reference in this area. This is a real source of influence, the so-called Brussels effect, through which Europe shapes global standards thanks to the strength of its regulatory framework. We have a market of more than 450 million consumers. Our actions must always focus on them, the citizens. To achieve this, we have two main tools: legislations when needed, such as the DFA, and the proper enforcement of the 16 rules. On legislation, we must stay connected to reality, especially in the world that is changing so quick and where consumers face new challenges every day. During the last legislative term, we took important steps by adopting horizontal rules that act as a contribution for the digital world: the DMA, the DSA, the AI Act, the Data Act. These laws were adopted to bring order on the digital space and to prevent abuses in digital markets. However, important problems remain. Consumers still face unfair practices such as dark patterns, influencer marketing, addictive product design, and online profiling. These practices are particularly concerning when they target vulnerable consumers, including children. This is why new legislation such as the DFA is absolutely needed. At the same time, we must avoid unnecessary overlaps, confusion, and excessive compliance cost. The DFA should focus on problems that are not already covered by existing legislation and should clearly fit within the current digital framework. But legislation alone is not enough. We also need to make sure that the rules are properly enforced and deliver real results. Implementation is a key part of the legislative process. The institutions, and especially the European Commission, have responsibility to ensure that the rules are applied correctly. We should never lose sight of the value of any law depends on its availability to deliver the results it was designed to achieve. Adopting legislation is not enough if it is not enforced effectively. This is also true for the upcoming revision of the CPC regulation, expected in the second quarter of this year, and the coordination of the mechanism under the CPC regulation is necessary in a fragmented market. Businesses and transactions operate across borders. Our enforcement tool must do the same. The current cooperation framework is no longer sufficient. One reason is the fragmentation created by the regulation itself. Because the system relies on cooperation between national authorities, many decisions remain at a member state level. This can lead to different approaches and weaker results. Our goal should be to strengthen this tool so that all platforms comply with the rules and consumers enjoy the highest level of protection. This objective is reflected in many of the reports currently being discussed in the Parliament and in the proposals being prepared by the Commission. Here, our focus is on implementation, because implementation matters, is fundamental. We do not need more legislation for the sake of legislation. We need rules that work and rules that are enforced. A strong CPC network is the best way to put into practice the principle of our market or rules and to ensure effective enforcement across the EU. Thank you.
Thank you. As Bruggeman, you are the head advocacy and enforcement. That's the key word today, enforcement. You're the head of enforcement at EuroCommerce. So you're the woman I need to ask a lot of questions. But how can we ensure that consumers become more aware and better understand their rights? Do they already know what their rights are? And can we do better with what there already is?
Well, let me first say, I mean, I love the topic of this panel, empowerment. It's music to my ears. I mean, as you can imagine, there's a reason why we took it as our mission statement, empower people, improve the market. And that's exactly because we refuse to believe that consumers are weak, and they are not. And they have, together they are many, and they have the power, and they should use it and to shape markets and really push for that innovation that really meets their needs. As a consumer, with your behavior, you can give a clear message to market players, to businesses, that you want this kind of innovation and that you want to reward also a company that gives it to you. Because make no mistake, what consumers really want is good, trustworthy products and services. And we're a global group, you know, Xavier, we're a global group of national consumer organizations, on-ground, membership-based. So that gives us, you know, what you can call a bit of a direct line with them, a bit of a finger on the pulse. And I can tell you this, consumers want the protection, they also want the empowerment, and they want the innovation. And it is our job as a consumer organization to also give this to them. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, by giving them what they miss the most, trustworthy information. All of our organizations are testing organizations. It's really on our DNA. It's still a core activity. So we do independent testing, insightful consumer service, science-based analysis. And by giving this information and offering all kinds of comparison tools, this is a way for us to really empower them to make good choices, and in that way also shape the market. At the same time, secondly, we also want to unlock this collective consumer power, but by actually working with marketplaces, because in the end we need to make sure that they can also deliver these products and services. And we really do not believe in this black and white approach, it's businesses against consumers and vice versa. I mean, it doesn't lead anywhere, because
they need to work together.
Well, consumers need strong businesses, and strong businesses need strong consumers. And this actually brings me to the third one, policy. That's how we approach policy, because, of course, if you want consumers to be fully empowered and take up that role, be that agent of change, they need to feel safe. They need to know that they are protected. And that's not at odds with innovation, quite the contrary. If consumers, for example, don't have the right information, or they have barriers to act upon it, then you will just end up with, you know, businesses offering bad quality at bad prices to the detriment of actually the good ones. We were talking about level playing field and competitiveness. This is what it is all about. And if you are an innovative business and you want to invest, I imagine you want to know that at the end of the day, you have consumers actually buying your products. So that will only happen if they are well protected, well informed, without being ripped off. And this is exactly how we also approach the DFA. It's the topic of the day as well, the DFA. It's the talk of the town, Isabel. We have been in so many panels together on the DFA. But exactly, that's how we approach it. It's really an opportunity to upgrade the framework, to fully empower consumers also in this digital, new digital environment, to be that agent of change, to be that driver for more competitiveness. Not dogmatic, not academic, but really practical, outcome-oriented. not to regulate for the sake of it, believe me, that's not what we are in the business for. It's just a matter of, updating, filling in the loopholes that are there, for example, on influencer marketing or on dynamic pricing, to make it clearer and to make it more enforceable. And that brings me actually to the final point, enforcement. We have heard it so much already. We do also enforce. We do public enforcement. We have the luck of having organizations like Testacha here in Belgium, but also in the other countries, filing parallel complaints to the authorities. But we also do private enforcement, getting redress for the consumers when they are harmed, collective actions. Because let's not forget, we already have quite an impressive set of rules in Europe, but we just don't enforce them properly.
Yeah, I think I say it every day, well, almost every day in my consumer show, that consumers in Europe are really well protected already. And if you ask what Europe does for you, consumer protection is absolutely at the heart of what they do. Brings me to Mariangela Marcelia from Amazon. What Els was saying, that consumers are powerful, they can change how you need to shape your business, and vice versa. You need to not work together, but you influence each other on both sides. As a company, what can you do to help consumers navigate their rights?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for the question. Thanks, Els, for really giving me the opportunity to talk, to kind of build on what you just said. What is, what is written on this board here, fair competition, consumer trust, innovating retail, these are much more than buzzwords for us. These are really part of our DNA. Consumer trust is what we have built our success upon for the past 30 years, almost operating in Europe. So very important thing for us. So the things that we do to protect customers, I will mention probably four. The first one is we give customers agency. You talk about that. So making sure that customers have full control of their customer experience on our website is part of what we do. So, for example, making returns on our website is extremely easy. We don't hide this possibility. Having full visibility of where the order is, knowing how to contact customer service, all these things give them agency, so they know that they can trust us and trust the relationship because they know what to do in case there are problems. The second point I will mention is the integrity of information, something that you also touched upon. They need to know, they need to have the right information in order to make informed choices. What this means, for example, customer product reviews. These are super important, and making sure that the information that we provide them to make informed choice are there, they are trustworthy, super important, and something that we take a lot of effort in order to maintain. Another thing that we do, many people don't know maybe that Amazon is not just a 1P business, it's also a 3P business. So actually the majority of our turnover comes from small and medium businesses, most of them European, that sell on our store, and making sure that they are also compliant is also a way of ensuring that customers are protected. So what we do is we train sellers. We do have a sellers university through which we train these businesses, these small and medium companies that sell on Amazon, and in this way we allow them to be compliant, and in this way we ultimately protect customers. And the fourth thing I want to mention is the cooperation with policymakers, which has also been touched upon. We are in this business. We are in the front line, if you wish, and it is very important for us to have a constant and open dialogue with the authorities, so that the legislation that is built really starts from the deep understanding of what the real issues that we see every day are. So we have this constant dialogue. There is a common thread across all the four things that I just mentioned, it is simplification. What we need to do in order to make sure that we protect customers is have simple rules that are easy to enforce. Again, this word comes back. But simplification is also what we hear from the companies that work with us. They want simpler rule. Yeah, so that is what we do today.
Thank you. Matilda Garcia Duarte, President at ANGET. National Retail, it works, I think, yeah. President, as a National Retail Association, is that something you can recognize as well? How do you see you can help consumers become more empowered?
Well, thank you very much, Xavier. And I would like to start saying thank you to EuroCommerce and to Ilya, Crystal, and Juanma for inviting me to participate in this panel and for the great job they do, because they are our voice in Europe, and that's very important for us and for European retailers. Thank you very much. And I also want to congratulate for the title. I love to see Retail Innovation Summit, because I just write an article in Spain that we say that defending companies is defending innovation, and defending innovation is defending the future of our economy. And innovation is not only technology or only AI. It's transforming our companies and giving our consumers the best experience. Is the heart of the retail. Then I think innovation is the heart of retail. I really congratulate you because of this summit. It's very important for us. And let me start for one point. I'm going to be very direct. Well, let's see. You said I represent ANGET. It's the most representative organization of European retailers in Spain, and we represent 250,000 employees and more than 8,000 stores in Spain. I say that because I want to start with a simple point. We, as European retailers, we operate maybe with most of the strictest consumer protection rules in the world. We operate with product safety, consumer rights, sustainability, traceability, blah, 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 whatever more. I don't know what else. But the problem is not everyone applies the same rules. Not everyone. I mean, we're talking and talking and talking, and 100,000, millions of parcels are entering in Europe without not applying the same rules that European retailers comply. Then I'm going to give you the figures in Spain. I think Spain is currently is one of the European countries with the highest penetrations of Chinese online platforms. 30% of all online orders in Spain come from Chinese platforms. Right now, in Europe, we have 5,900, I think, millions of low-value parcels that come into European market. 91% is from Chinese platforms, and in Spain, it's almost 200 millions. Well, I mean, this is not a phenomenon anymore. It's a systematic challenge. You know, and then the review of the CPC regulation, I think, is a major opportunity, because when I heard Pablo talking about all the laws that we approve, I mean, I'm a civil servant, I'm a lawyer. I have no time for studying and understanding all the laws that we have in Europe, in Spain, in Madrid, in Catalonia, in Barcelona, in Murcia. I mean, we have thousands of laws. Well, we need no more laws. We need to enforce the laws, and to everyone, to be enforced by everyone. I think that's the key point that Pablo said. And as consumers, as retailers, for us, there are 3 points that are very important. There is information, our trust, and also we need digital resilience. And when we talk about information, well, for us as an European organization, for us it's very important, and we are working very close to the Spanish government to implement for all goods and all products the digital labeling. I think this is a good opportunity for the single market in Europe, and we have to regulate about the digital labeling. I mean, if we go to Spain, you ever have a bigger problem with the labeling because, well, here in Brussels, you also have it, but you have maybe 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many languages you have here, but in Spain, I think we have 4. And in a label, we don't have a space for the information we need to give it to our consumer. Then it's very important to implement in Europe the digital labeling. The second thing is the trust that we have talked about trust. Well, for us, trust means, well, we said that the Commission, or I don't know if it was the Commission or who was, put a fine to Temu, 200 million. Very good, 2 years for 200 million. And after, how millions per year they put, how million of parcels? 5,600 million. I mean, it's a good start point, but it's not enough, I think, because if you don't have the trust of the consumer, I mean, you lose the backbone of Europe. We believe in the rule of law, and we believe that our principles, our values, our democratic values are that we have to complain the law. The law is not only to write it and to talk about it, we need to enforce it. And the digital resilience is very important for us too, because I just want to give you an example and I finish. Can you imagine that 60% of the products that you sell in your stores contains dangerous substances or maybe not breaches the labeling or whatever? Your stores will be closed, for sure. For sure. I mean, and we're talking about what? I mean, we need stronger measures because only the retailers cannot solve the problem. This is a really systematic challenge that we need consumers, we need retailers, but we need a real political compromise of the authorities.
Strong advocate for the more empowerment. Now let's talk enforcement. Isabelle Perignon, clearly key enforcement. I don't know how many times we've heard the word today already. I think about 100 maybe. How is the Commission planning to strengthen the enforcement of EU consumer protection rules?
Enforcement is key. We said it already in the 2030 consumer agenda. You heard it today again. We are preparing indeed the revision of the CPC regulation that you already mentioned. How are we going to do it? First, there are 2 parts of it. So first, we want to revise the existing system. So as you know today, enforcement is done at national level, being public enforcement or private enforcement. And the role of the Commission is to try to assist whenever they want, whenever they need, this coordinated approach among the national enforcement authorities. But the problems that we see today is that indeed it takes very long, an average 18 months, which is an eternity in terms of business. Second problem that we see that never, so far, there was never really a sanction being imposed by the CPC network. Why? Because it really relies on voluntary commitments. So you have very good companies who, on good faith, change their the problems that are appearing by offering, voluntary commitments. Then the problem is solved. Fine, perfect. But the problem is that it's not enough now because we see that this system does not function for some companies who prefer to wait and play. I mean, time is on their side. So the reforms that we want to put in place is first to help have a stronger coordination system now. Why? By putting, some time limits, deadlines, by also, if you see that there's a weaker national enforcement authorities, trying to see how another leading national authority could help the other national authorities coordinate in this action. And second, which is the second part of the reform, is to see how you can give also above a certain threshold for the big cases where there's really a need to act at EU level, the power to investigate and enforce to the Commission. And again, this is something that we want to do that in full harmony with the existing system. So we fully respect private enforcement, very important for us. But we see that there's really a need to be stronger whenever we have very serious damages. And the idea behind this is to do and to take, what is already existing. So, for example, taking the examples of what we have from the DSA, trying to put, stricter timelines so that the action goes quicker, swifter. Have, of course, the focus and the experience that we have from competition law. Competition enforcement works very well. It's a shared competence also with the national competition authorities. So draw really from this experience that we have and have a system of enforcement that is more deterrent. And why do we need that? Well, because I was with Pablo in the parliament, and I think you were there, Elsa, a few weeks ago, and we heard a big platform saying and telling us openly, so in front of the whole parliament, that they were thinking of changing their business model. Why? Because then they were escaping the legislation of the DSA so that's where we want to go. We want then to enforce and reinforce the system of the CPC. So at least, the platforms who want to escape the DSA will at least, have a strong enforcement system that we can catch with the reform of the CPC. So that's where we're coming from. I think that for the companies and the traders themselves, they see an advantage. We will have an obligation in the reform to also have an obligation to have a representative on the European territory against which we can, serve any notifications, any decision. And we're talking about imposing fines. We're also talking about having interim measures and also having the possibility to delist a trader from any kind of browser if we see that there's really an urgency and that we need to delist the company from the browser. So it's not only sanctions, and fines, pecuniary fines that we see, but we want really to have the full tools being available. And of course, we will do that with the national authorities, and it will be complementary to what is already existing on the market through competition law, through the DSA, through what our colleagues are doing, at national level. So that's really the objective, to be stronger and to help also defend a strong Europe and competitiveness in Europe.
Thank you, Isabel. Else, is that the way forward? The way forward from the Commission? Is that the right way forward?
Well, let me just say that indeed in Europe we tend to focus a lot on rules, on regulation, but whatever new rule we come up with, if there's no proper enforcement, it will be again just a piece of paper. And I intentionally use the word again because we already have an impressive set of consumer rules. We need to update some of them, but we already have an impressive set of rules. We just don't enforce them properly. And that enforcement gap is very real. It's something that we and my organizations in the countries have been experiencing firsthand in the last decades. I can give you many examples, but maybe because one example says more than 1,000 words. So let me just share you one of the most recent ones, one of the most recent EuroCommerce enforcement actions, because it links very much back to also what Isabel was saying. In the EuroCommerce countries, we have a cross-border data dashboard, complaint data dashboard. So when there's a problem, it pops up on our radar. And at a certain moment, we spotted some problems with Stellantis cars. So the Citroëns, the Peugeots, Everything was related to the AdBlue. It turns out that Stellantis was asking consumers to replace the entire tank, while all of the time it was actually their mistake. So our Italian and our Spanish organization flagged it to the authorities immediately. That was December 2022. They also flagged it to the CPC because clearly this was not just an Italian thing or a Spanish thing. It was more than that. Yet CPC did not take it. But the Italian authority did, and they managed to get engagements from Stellantis to fix it for the Italians. Because when we asked the same commitments in the other countries, Stellantis said no. So we have the same company, the same problem, different treatment. The only difference where you live in Europe. So what we did was we went back to the CPC, this time with monitoring reports of all of the countries, and luckily by the end of 2024, they got engagement for the whole of Europe. But you would say, yay, yeah, success? No, hold your horses, no need to pop any champagne bottle yet, because the platform that Stellantis set up was, first of all, it took ages, but it's also slow, it's confusing, and up till today, 4 years later, many consumers are still waiting for the solution. There is no systematic follow-up by the authorities of any commitments that were made by Stellantis, and also the consumer organizations that initially reported, they don't get any feedback. For example, our Belgian organization never heard back from the authority. And that's just one example. I mean, I can give you another on hand luggage fees, where in Italy they say it's okay, in Spain they say it's illegal, and Belgium just never answered. I mean, it's the same thing, one problem, one company, a different treatment, and surely we can do better. This needs to be faster, more effective. And I know the solution will be a combination of many, but let me maybe highlight two that are particularly dear to our heart. We really want to plead for, first of all, a more European-led enforcement. Stellantis was never a national problem. It was European from the very beginning. So why wait ages to have also a European response and in the meantime get many separate and contradictory responses? Why not make sure that in cases like this, the Commission can take the lead and ensure this European approach? We are talking about the single market over and over again, but we will never have a single market if we have one European rule but 27 jurisdictions. That's the one thing. Secondly, I really want to plead for a public enforcement that is more supportive of private enforcement. There's more to enforcement than just the CPC, there's also private enforcement. We do not only file complaints with authorities. EuroCommerce is the only consumer organization that has been running class actions across different countries in Europe. It really helps to have a clear decision of authorities on the infringement. What would help us even more is also having a clear indication of the damage occurred by this infringement on the consumers.
Thank you, Els. Unfortunately, our time is limited, but I still have questions for the panel. Mariangela Marcelia, you represent a company operating across several member states. Based on what you heard from the Commission, what would actually help you ensure fairer competition? Now you're going to say enforcement, more consistent enforcement. What do you need on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So, well, let me say, I think the ultimate goal of all this legislation is ensure that there is level playing field so that the bad actors are not treated the same as good actors, and we have a good mechanism to kind of protect the good actors and take action against the good actors. The bad actors. So that should be the ultimate goal. I want to provide not just Amazon point of view. I want to provide the point of view of the many good actors, good companies that work with us. We have hundreds of thousands of sellers, so companies from Spain, Italy, Germany, all the other countries. And it is quite interesting what they tell us. So these are, talented companies that are very successful in their home country. The moment they start maybe work with us to kind of take the benefit of the single market and want to start exporting their goods cross-border, they immediately are faced with all the fragmentation that you were talking about. They are faced with 35 plus legislations, and it is like, you need to run the marathon with a backpack full of rocks, whereas some of the other competitors that maybe exploit the ambiguity of this fragmented legislation don't have that. So it is unfair, right? It doesn't really create this level playing field that we do need to create for our companies in Europe. So what we can do, and the other thing I want to mention, the people that want to comply with a regulation that is complex and fragmented have extra costs that bad actors don't have to face. This is, has been estimated being between 25 and 30% of their cost of doing business, which is a lot, is resources that are actually subtracted to innovation. So instead of investing this money in developing new products, developing new goods, they need to spend all this money just to be compliant with the load. I think this is something that we all should reflect upon. Two things, two practical suggestions from our viewpoint. One is building the infrastructure that allows these companies to be compliant by leveraging the resources that are there and working in partnership with the public-private. So one of the things that we experience every day is that we are helping a lot of sellers working with us to kind of jump the hurdles of this fragmentation, because they can use our own infrastructure, for example, in order to reach customers all across Europe. And the second one, I repeat myself, simplify, simplify, simplify. So the ambiguity of the legislation creates a drag on the good players and creates gaps that can be exploited by bad players to kind of, compete unfairly with companies that are based in this continent.
Thank you. Now, from Arcad's point of view, how are you dealing with cross-border infringements and unfair competition from third countries? How do you deal with it? And what do you need?
We deal bad. We need a lot. We don't have time. We don't have time. But we have three priorities. I'm going to be very short. We have three priorities. First of all, enforcement must be faster. I mean, while we are talking and while all these procedures, all these investigations go, they are much slower than how the digital platforms, the speed of the digital platforms. Then the enforcement must to be faster. Second, we think that enforcement must be European. As he said before, if we really believe in the single market, we need that the enforcement is a European matter. Because I'm going to give you an example with Spain. We are, I think we are two countries in Europe, but I'm going to say the other one. I'm just going to talk about Spain. But we are almost the only one that we don't still have appointed the national authority to be in charge of the DSA. I mean, there is no one in Spain that is in charge to monitorize, to investigate, to sanctions the enforcement of the DSA. Then what are we talking about? And there are two countries. And as he said before, we have 27 countries, and maybe each one does whatever he wants. Then we need that enforcement must be European. And we need that the European Commission has a stronger coordinating role for these major cases of cross-border infringements, because it needed to be an European matter. And at least we also need that the persistent non-compliance for this kind of platform has real consequences. And when we say real consequences, we are talking about not only that is good, 200 million fine. I mean, I think it's very good, and I'm really happy, and I congratulate the hard and strong job that they are doing. But we need more real consequence for this behavior, because if you calculate, it's 0.03 euros per parcel. 200 million. I mean, it's not enough. Then we need stronger powers for the Commission and a clear methodology. We need to know the methodology they have for this stronger position to coordinate that the Commission has to have. And we also need an European instrument to temporarily block, suspend, or close the asset to the market, to the platforms that they persistent not comply. I mean, compliance cannot be a disadvantage for the European retailers. And at the end, we also need a structured dialogue between consumers, stakeholders, and authorities. Then I just want to finish saying thank you, and also saying that consumer protections and fair competition go hand in hand. And also, if we want a single market, same rules, but same enforcement.
Thank you. Now, a lot of wish lists. There's a lot that needs to be done. My question to you is, of course, what are you taking back to the European Parliament from all of this?
Well, thank you very much. I think we are almost aligned here. I miss the Council.
Almost.
No, I'm serious. I miss the Council here in this debate. That's the truth. I mean, the Commission is working on this. We're aware of what is the problem. We're aware of the problems that we are facing. You know it. We have the best quality of regulation for consumers in the whole world. And we have the best companies because the quality of our products are thanks probably because we are good in doing it, but also because they are compliant with the rules for the quality of the protection of consumers. So no doubts about that. I think that nobody here have any doubts about that. But where is the Council? Because we are saying, well, the enforcement, look into the Commission. Enforcement, it's because, no. The enforcement is a problem because of the fragmentation of the market. And the fragmentation of the market is a consequence of the member states. And that's a reality. So if we want to do this in a proper way, we are missing the Council here. Do we have to invite 27 people here just to debate with us? That
would be a long debate.
But that is exactly what you are facing today in the market. So you have to put 27 people together with us and just to try to get something. That's a reality. So what can I bring back to the Parliament to keep pushing? Okay. I mean, in the Parliament, we're aware also of what we do and what we have to do. And the Commission, I think that we are going to be prepared for good news, but it's not the same to have good news in the paper and then to have a proper implementation of that proposals and also of the amendments from the Parliament. But the thing is that it doesn't matter if we do our job. What's going on with the Council? I mean, are we prepared just to maintain the will and to maintain the same direction? That is, do we prefer directive or a regulation? Well, you know, the Council is always going to say to make the same answer. It's always going to say to do the same answer. Directive. Why? Because they don't want to lose any sovereignty. But if they give more power, for example, to the Commission, they think that they are losing power. And we are here, and we are like a fly, you know, it's like all the time, you know, like the Parliament. I mean,
making the annoying sound.
It's always. Yeah. But I mean, once we go to decide something in a trilogue, we're always in a minority. No, you could decide with the Council. It's a joke. The Council has experts, negotiators, and we're politicians. I mean, I have colleagues that has been in one negotiation in a trial for the first time and for the last. It's a joke. So the thing is, how can I give back to the Parliament? What message get from here? The message that I got before coming over is the same. Nothing changed. So how can we all together push to our member states just to say, well, do your job. We need a single market. We need one rule for all And it's not a joke. The situation, the global situation, is not good for anybody. Mm-hmm. So this is a crucial opportunity because we are facing the most and the biggest crisis in the last 70 years in Europe. So just take it. It's an opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for keep pushing the agenda. Tell me you're from Spain without telling me you're from Spain. Bring your own fan. You're the smartest woman in the room. Thank you so much for being here. Matilda Garcia Duarte, Mariangela Marcelia, Els Bruggeman, Pablo Arias Echeverria, and Isabel Perignon. Thank you so much. Because yes, it's hot in here, but we have still one panel lined up for you. And that is the panel on how AI is rewiring retail. AI is rapidly moving from experimentation to core business infrastructure. It is increasingly seen as a key driver of competitiveness, productivity, and innovation across retail. Drawing on the McKinsey & Company EuroCommerce report, Rewiring Retail in Europe, the AI Imperative, panelists will be invited to bring use cases and experience on how AI is rewiring retail, on what industry leaders and policymakers can do to support a competitive retail sector. This panel will be moderated by the Director Digital Single Market and Consumer Policy at EuroCommerce. As such, he leads EuroCommerce's work on files related to artificial intelligence. Ilya Bruggeman.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, or good afternoon, sorry. We're not there yet. So thank you all for being here. So I'm in doubt now. Should I be on the stage or should I be in front of it? Okay, somebody is pointing there. Okay. All right, so I'll be the first one on stage. So I think we have a very exciting panel today. I see that some people are probably putting on some kind of AI device to follow the discussion. But let me invite our panelists. So let me first invite Hailey Nguyen to the stage. She's associate partner at McKinsey & Company, and she was very much involved in the report on rewiring how AI is rewiring retail that we presented at the beginning. Please take a seat. Then I'm very happy also to announce Bastiaan Seenert from MediaMarkt Saturn, where he is head of data and AI of the AI Initiative Office. And also to say he is recently appointed as our EuroCommerce representative in the AI Act Advisory Forum of DG Connect. Then we have Christoph Busch. So he's our professor from the University of Osnabrück, and he's also linked to the SERRE think tank. So please take the stage. And last but definitely not least, Brando Benifei. He is MEP. He has worked on the AI Act. He has worked on the Digital Omnibus on AI, and he's also involved in the Digital Omnibus, so he can tell us a lot about what's happening on AI in the EU. All right. So, Hailey, let me start with you. So we've been working together already, right, for a few months on this report, and I thought it was super interesting also to see how you, as McKinsey, look at things, because obviously you have a more commercial view on this, and we look at it from a more policy perspective. But based on what you have seen from us, but also what you have learned throughout this the work on the report, do you think that retail is ready for AI?
Definitely. I mean, I've also served a lot of retail clients myself, and if we look at across all industries, retail is actually the second biggest sector that will benefit from all the use cases, the values that AI is going to bring, right? Just behind, basically, high tech is the largest, and retail is the second largest. There are also a lot of already ongoing initiatives across, the marketing, the commercial domain, the back office functions, as Holger presented earlier. And retail is ready. We've heard a lot, and I'm sure that, from a Media Mart perspective, you have a few more stories to share. But as you read through the report, you will hear and see examples from big retailers like ASOS, like IKEA, Tesco, Adeo, who have invested into AI, the analytical, the traditional AI, years ago, building the foundation from a data architecture perspective, and actually start reaping some of the benefits already.
Okay, and what do retailers need maybe? So that you've now explained a bit. So actually, there are already quite some companies, building AI systems or incorporated in their operations. I think at the same time, we also see there are a lot of SMEs out there in the market. So what do you think retailers would need to stay up to speed?
So at the end of the report, we did put forward 5 things that retailers need to do or to stay competitive in this AI-driven age. I won't go through all 5, but maybe let me just put up a teaser of the big 3, right? I would say number 1 is each of the retailers should have a very clear view of their own value map, right? What we mentioned around, what is the biggest commercial, biggest domains that AI will change or influence for your business, very specific to your business model, because a marketplace versus, a direct-to-consumer retail will be very different. Grocery versus hardline versus softline, right? So each of the retailers need to have their own value map, and being super clear of your own value map, I would say, is number 1 priority. So you know where to invest in, you know how to prioritize and sequence your plan of action. I would say the second thing that retailers will really need to think about is, once you have that clear view of the value map, how do you really rethink about your operating model and your workflows and your processes from the ground up, right? So the whole concept that we bring forward within the report is the concept of rewiring. It's not just about adding 1 or 2 AI tools on top of what you are doing today, but strategically really think about the role of the agents in your organization. What is, it's not about line and boxes of human alone, but in the future with agentic AI, what is your new operating model, including basically human and agents, and how those two workforce interact, right? Some of my clients are already calling part of their workforce the quote-unquote digital workforce. And then the last point, as part of the teaser, I would say, is really being intentional around the investment, the point that Holger also brought up, tracking the ROI, and really, invest in the things that matter in a sequenced and intentional way, right? I've also seen a big failure modes that many of my clients go through is investing in 100, 200 of small use cases without a clear view of where is the domain, how those use cases ladder up in one area, right? The high performers that we see often very intentionally pursue domain by domain rather than running, 100 of use cases that spread across all 20 different domains in an organization.
Okay. Can you give some examples of these use cases?
Well, a lot of, I would say in terms of examples, the most common example that, a lot of the clients invested in early days in AI, number 1 is in customer service, right? So, the ability that AI, whether, from the quote-unquote analytical AI of preempting the customer demand, addressing, the kind of problem that will increase the volume of calls. So, for example, with businesses like IKEA, right? They talk about they have 8,500 customer service agents, and now I believe that more than 50%, up to 80% of their of the customer queries are actually being handled by AI today, right? And that benefit not only a productivity, angle from the retailer perspective, but also from a customer. The average wait time will be much lower because, instead of waiting 5 minutes on the call, actually, with this, new workforce of AI, their concern will be addressed much sooner, right? So that's one of the very popular use cases, and most importantly, that also free up the capacity for the existing agents to spend more time on consulting the client on more advanced tasks, right? The second use cases I would say very popular is in the marketing field, especially the creative generation space. So AI has disrupted the value chain of creative across, businesses. I don't know, any of you are already using the AI tool for you today, but, even I myself, I asked, family picture generate in, Studio Ghibli format and think of that at an enterprise level, things that require multiple agencies and, even the pack shot. If I take, going back to the example, IKEA, each of the furniture laying out in different rooms, in the past that consume a lot of resources and time, to actually produce, the product images in store and customize in different rooms. Nowadays, with AI, you can customize in different countries, different settings, different landscape, different rooms, even within minutes, right? So the second, creative and marketing would be, I say the second most popular use cases that I've seen.
Okay, that's very interesting. So let's see, Bastiaan. Do you recognize yourself in what Hailey is saying, but also if you look at what you're doing as a company?
Oh boy, yes. So the only thing that pops in my mind when I was listening to Holger is why didn't I have access to this report earlier? It could have helped me to ease some of the conversations that we had internally, and so many things I can resonate with. One thing in particular stood out to me, and Holger mentioned it, was that at scale doesn't fail through the technology, but through the organization. So for us, it was never the issue of finding the right model. It was more about how do we operationalize it, and how do we bring the ownership, the decision making, also the risk awareness into the things. And that's why we basically came up with our AI guideline, and it was putting in effective May 1st this year, where we are building around a centralized process for all AI use cases, starting from the idea to the production. So our main issue was how do we bring some kind of guardrail and guideline to 50,000 employees in 11 countries. And we are starting basically out with handing in the idea in a centralized funnel. We are reviewing it, we are prioritizing it, we are making a risk awareness to that, and guiding the business units from all different domains, so not just one domain, but all different domains towards the production line. And that was kind of an interesting experience, because building this guideline, and we aligned it with our ExCo members, with the supervisory board, with the Works Council, and everyone expected us that we are getting slower. But the opposite happened, because there were fewer alignments necessary internally, there was more confidence in the people on how to move forward, and therefore we ended up being faster. So governance was for us not a brake, but rather a steering instrument.
Okay, so and how long did it take to write down these guidelines?
Oh, we partnered up together with, so myself and the head of assurance, we worked together on that topic roughly 4 months to draft it up, and another 2 months to align it with all entities.
And then so 2 months for the implementation to put it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that sounds relatively fast, right? Yes. Okay. And do you have examples of some concrete outcomes in the organization?
Well, yeah, so two examples that pop in my head. So, for example, we had a relatively simple AI use case within the store. So we also have a lot of customer care use cases, but I love this store example very much because from the idea to the execution, it was 4 days. And it's basically wonderful. So when someone is handing in a device in the store, we are sending it to our repair centers. And from time to time, the repair centers open up the device and, well, don't find the error. If they're looking at the description of the error, they are booting up the device and then see nothing is wrong. Then they're sending it back to the store, and then the customer needs to be questioned again, what is wrong with the device and so on. That is frustration on the customer side. This is cost on our end, and so we implemented an AI that basically in the process is checking upon the right description, asking follow-up questions, and then help the store employee to write a perfect description of the error, so that we are reducing the cost into that. So that is one example where I was thrilled about how fast we are getting this idea basically to life. And the other thing that is kind of a subsequent part that I didn't expect it. So we also had a situation that a business unit was requesting an analytical AI, and on the process, we also knew that we are shifting from one data system to another data system. So instead of following up with this use case, we kind of combined it with the transitional program to ensure that we are already on the same track. So we are creating also value by explicitly saying that we are not doing certain use cases, but rather trying to find the right spot to steer to that.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. So, Christoph, we have, I think, been already in several panels, sometimes more theoretical and on the policy side. But if you listen to this, how does it match with the research that you were doing, with the academic reality where you are in?
Well, as often, practitioners are a bit ahead of academic research, but we're trying to catch up fast and try to establish frameworks to understand what is actually happening there and what this could mean for the regulatory landscape. And I think what the report very clearly shows is that the commercial relationship between buyers and sellers is fundamentally being restructured. And this is not just a challenge for retailers who want to keep their visibility, but it's also a challenge for regulators, for the regulatory framework. Because the regulatory framework is based on a certain model of a customer journey that starts at a retailer's website or starts at a marketplace where a customer searches for a product and proceeds to the checkout. And that is no longer the case if you search, if the customer journey starts with ChatGPT or Gemini and comparison happens there, and maybe even checkout. And the other point is that the current regulatory framework also assumes a relatively stable architecture of platforms, intermediaries, merchants with clearly identifiable roles and responsibilities attached to these roles. And now AI commerce, AI-driven commerce is unsettling this framework, and these roles are becoming blurred. And you can ask, what actually is ChatGPT? Is it a platform? Is it a marketplace? Is it a comparison site? And these are very important questions, because to each of these roles, specific regulatory requirements are attached. And if it's unclear which role you're playing, or if you're playing all these roles at the same time, it's unclear what are your compliance obligations. So the first question, I would say, from a regulatory perspective, is how to apply the existing rules to these new business models. It's still unclear whether the Digital Services Act applies to ChatGPT. It's unclear whether the general product safety regulation, the rules on online marketplaces that we have there, apply to a scenario where you search for a product in an AI search engine, go to the checkout. Is it a marketplace in the sense of the general product safety regulation? Open question, yeah. And of course, other questions, how to protect consumers against manipulation in such a scenario, how to ensure price transparency, what about liability? And these are not just consumer law, consumer protection questions. I think these are also questions of level playing field. Because if traditional retailers and existing online marketplaces are subject to the existing rules, and the new players are not subject, or if it's unclear whether they are subject, there's not a level playing field here.
Yeah. So actually what you're saying, it's not only questions from the consumer side or the regulatory side, but also from the business side. You need to know who you are, you need to know who you're dealing with.
Exactly. If there's a new competitor arising next to your side with an AI-driven business model, and if this competitor is not subject to the same compliance requirements, that's an issue. That's a problem, definitely.
So I think we're going to get to regulation in a minute, but because we have now already a set of new rules, what do you think could be a first step?
Sure. I think it's probably a bit too early to regulate this comprehensively, because it's a very rapidly evolving landscape. It's not yet clear what will be the business models. There will probably be a variety of different business models. So I think the first step is probably to provide legal certainty to market participants, how the existing rules apply in this new and changing scenario. So I think the first step would be guidance, Commission guidance, just as we have it for the UCPD, for the Consumer Rights Directive, guidance on how these rules apply on AI-mediated business models. And then a gap analysis would be the next step, to see where there is an emerging gap between the existing rules and the evolving business models. And we've seen that before. Think of the past few years, a lot of work has been done on how to get online marketplaces, how to get fulfillment service providers into the regulatory framework, because there were no rules for these players when the rules were drafted, right? And now there are new players, how to get them in the regulatory framework. That's the gap analysis, but that's the second step.
Okay, thank you. Brendo, so you've been working a lot on AI legislation. At the same time, we see now with this report that AI is rewiring the retail sector. So it's completely changing, the way we work. It's our own operations, our supply chain, our interaction with our customers. At the same time, these new rules still need to be implemented. It's unclear sometimes how they apply. So, how do you see this for you based on your knowledge? Like, how can we make sure that retailers have the room and the capacity to innovate and to invest in AI, and that we're not, while we're actually still at the very early stage, because we don't know how this will all develop, that we stifle this development somehow?
Is it working?
Yes.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. I will be very straightforward. The rules that we have put in place, at least for the AI Act, then, as you know, the EU has a lot of rules and a lot apply to your members of EuroCommerce. But if we stay for the AI Act work, in fact, all the rules there are to create a better situation for the adoption of AI by the retail sector. because we are preventing the fact that the systems that are sold to be used by those that operate in this space are sold together with the risks, so that the upper operators, the developers, can just create an oligopolistic context where they just don't share information, and any problem that may happen with customers, with consumers, will be completely just put down to the downstream operator that can only renounce to use AI or bear all the risks, because the rules are there anyway. Either they are decided publicly by having the objective to prevent risks where they are, and in fact to also identify the enormous amount of AI that has no big risk, and so it doesn't need rules, because the AI Act only regulates where there are real risks, when you deal with healthcare, when you deal with workforce, when you deal with administration of justice. But there is a lot of low-risk AI that retail uses a lot for the supply chains, for the stocks, for the optimization. That's not dealt with by the AI Act. In fact, the AI Act excludes all that kind of use cases of AI. Obviously, there are other rules that need to be followed, but the AI Act is not taking into that. Instead, it's acting where real risks exist, and it creates, as I told you, a level of transparency so that the users of AI can trust it, because our problem is that we are not using it. We need more usage of AI also in retail to increase productivity, to reduce costs, to reduce time to do things. And we want so to increase adoption, and that's also why in the AI Act we have the AI literacy obligation, so that organizations, both public and private, will need to do their part to prepare our workforce to use AI. Today I was speaking at the European Assembly of the Managers, because it's not only about the workers, it's also about those that are leading organizations, the entrepreneurs. It's for all the pieces of the puzzle that are in our economy, including in the retail sector. So to conclude my point, I think that we need to invest in education for AI. We need to have clear enforcement where legal certainty is key, so that the European Commission, together with the member states, do not complicate our life, but makes it easy to understand how the rules are applied. And we also simplify where it's needed. We are working on that with the omnibus, so that, for example, on the usage of data, things are easier. This is what we are discussing now with the data omnibus that is under discussion. I think these are all relevant for the sector, and I think, and I conclude on this point, that also what was released today, the Code of Practice for Transparency, which is the fruit of the work also with the European Parliament, will be very useful, because this code applies a part of the AI Act with clear operational measures to make it possible to create transparency in the generative AI context, so that we avoid that we have generative AI used to mislead, to disinform, to commit crimes, and this is also to deal with this sector, because deep fakes can be used for these objectives, not only in like political campaigns, but also in economic activity. They can be used in, I would say, innocuous ways, but also in dangerous ways. And so having transparency to be sure that an AI content is recognizable as such is important also in this sector, because today we are flooded already by this content that we are not sure if it's true or false. And this can be impactful, for example, for advertising, for consumer protection, for protecting the industry, I don't know how to say it in English, sorry, marca. It means the mark, sorry? the brand, sorry, I meant the brand. Yes, to protect the brand, and so there are various areas where this will be extremely important.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask Bastiaan, it's not a question we discussed before, but because we were talking about the implementation of the AI Act, can you say something about how you dealt with this process?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely unprepared, so let me dive into that for a second. And I love one point that you mentioned, because this is something that when we were reading through the AI Act, we found game-changing in the end, because there's a clear ruling behind where are use cases with low risk and where are use cases with high risk. And that is basically what we did in the funnel that I explained earlier, that we are preparing white papers for green cases, for yellow cases, for orange cases, and for red cases who are definitely prohibited. And every of those white papers contains basically the taxation about what it is. And for green cases, which is the majority of the AI use cases that I see so far, is basically a fast lane possible, so that we can check up and see through a self-assessment everything is within the EU AI Act confirmation, and then we can walk it through in the process very fast. And that leads us to connecting back to the use case that I mentioned earlier. If everything checks out, then it goes very far, and that lifts the heavy weight on the business unit who is responsible for the outcome of the use case, to figuring out whether this is something that I need to take care of, align internally or even externally about what is the risk with the AI case. That's for one point. The other point is regarding how to train our people on the usage of AI. So we have 50,000 employees at MediaMarkt that are from working in the store, working in warehouses, to knowledge workers, to engineers who are building AI use cases, and basically everything is in there. And I don't know, some of you know there are trainings, one size fits all. Everyone needs to do that regardless how often they repeated that and heard that. And we did it a little bit different. So we started out with a questionnaire. So every employee got a questionnaire from us, and out of the results of the questionnaire, it's then been decided, yeah, okay, you already know enough in terms of EU AI Act, so you don't need to take any test or move forward. And if you're not there yet, then depending on what is your level, we are providing you with different learning paths. So we are explicitly looking into where our employees are in the journey, so that everyone who is working AI with a living has no problem in doing that, but also people who are already starting and going with the hype of AI also means that we are separating a little bit of the people. So there are people who are using family photos to make it Studio Ghibli, who is very interested into the topic and going on, and others are still afraid and don't know where to start. And with that approach, we hoped, and we succeeded in that, to reach everyone and get them on the same page. So the EU AI Act and the clarity in that helped a lot for us to build those concepts.
I think it's amazing to hear how you've tried to deal with the implementation. So now I wanted to switch to another topic, agentic AI, agentic commerce. I think we hear a lot about it, right? I think it's you see it in the news, in the media, there are articles, reports, we have one today as well. But obviously, it's sometimes difficult to grasp really what it is about. So we try to address this also a little bit in the report, but I think it's also, it's potentially very disruptive. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so definitely I think let's start with agentic, right? Because I think the key thing and the key difference, the key disruption that agentic AI brings to the table is that ability of automated workflow and decision making without, and of course you can have some human intervention point, but without regular intervention point, right? So that's the whole point of agentic AI. And you know, we talk a lot about how we change the internal operation for the retailers, from the process of, you know, ticket resolution, in which, you know, with agentic AI in place, there are straightforward queries and straightforward tasks that can just be done end-to-end by the agents, right? I think you are raising a more important disruption, which is the agentic commerce, where we believe that it is the biggest structural shift in retail. And when we mean structural shift, it boils down to disrupting the relationship between the consumers and the retailers. And there are different shapes and forms of agentic commerce. And if I go all the way to, you know, the wave 3 that we mentioned in the report, which is autonomous commerce. Even within autonomous commerce, there are, you know, potential 3 ways that I see it, right? There's the agent, the consumer agent interacting with the retailer agent, which is the extreme case. There's the consumer agent interacting with, you know, the human retailers. And then the other side, the consumer, the human consumer interacting with the retailer agent, right? So we can think of it along that 3 ways, and each of those 3 ways have, you know, different forms of disruption. Traditionally, I mean, retailers like yours have, you know, loyalty programs that you build based on your brand equity, based on the relationship that the retailer, the consumers have with you. But imagine if, you know, in between the agents that are in place, that concept of loyalty suddenly becomes a little bit shaky. The consumers or the new agents now are following the algorithms, and therefore the how to win playbook will need to be rewritten. It's not about building the strongest brands. It's not about building, you know, the most abundant footfall, abundant network to have the footfall, but rather in the digital world, how do you structure your product data so the agent can actually read and understand your data? How do you, you know, structure everything behind that it, you know, API related, and how do you structure the data that the different agent system can interact, right? So I think the how to win playbook will completely change. It is also, I would say, the second angle is from a business model perspective. Retailers, you know, after the traditional business has tried for many years, innovate their business models. Some retailers open up, you know, marketplace. Some retailers invest in retail media as another revenue stream. And now with the new path to purchase, with the new consumer journeys, with agentic commerce, the retail media business model also needs to change, because the consumer no longer go directly to retailer site and have exposure to advertising and all of that anymore. Right. So there is a structural shift, and I would say the last structural shift that none of the retailer can forget is around their own workforce. So with this agentic commerce, with agentic AI in place, what are the skills that your people, you know, your talent will need in the future? And that's where I mean, in our report, we also share that we believe that 75% of all the jobs in retail will change, or will change in the future, whether it's the rise of new roles or just new skills within the existing roles. And we do see a new immersion of technologists across the domain coming in place, right? It's no longer, you know, people and technology, but we see the people technologists, so who have HR expertise, but also have technology in the world of no-code, low-code, and can implement some of these changes themselves instead of the, you know, traditional interaction between business and tech. I don't know about your business, but I've seen many of my clients spending a lot of time just to bridge this collaboration between business need, functional needs, and technology. Whenever you need to submit a request, and then the tech team has a bunch of tickets to go through and all of that, right? That will change in the future, or it has already started changing.
Yeah, I guess it already has started. So actually there are quite some different aspects about what agentic AI and agentic commerce may bring. So, Bastian, if you listen to this, is this something you are also discussing internally? Is you already thinking about how to prepare for this, or?
Yeah, so it's I think it's fair to say it's not a question about if this will be coming, but rather when we will have it in Europe. If I'm looking outside of Europe, then I do get a fairly good picture around where something is going in what direction. So I'm totally in line what you said. It's in the report, and it's also what we are discussing internally. And I think the important thing for a retailer, especially for us, is that we have a certain transparency, because in the future, the shopping experience might start in a different place, not in our website. So I can envision a customer wanting to have a coffee maker, black, below 200 euros, and on Saturday, because on Sunday the in-laws comes. And then, we need to be in this conversation. So how do we get there? We saw some puzzle pieces in the report that will help us to get into there. But this is something that needs to be built and needs to be curated, and it's not the traditional selling experience and shopping experience that we are talking about right now. So the shift towards that is very important. And also the AI is kind of, very, very cruel when it comes to transparency. So they know everything, they know every data point. So you do need to prepare the own data within the organization that it is presentable towards an AI. The second thing for me is that we kind of, and this goes into your direction, that we are talking about governance. So what is basically the guardrails for an agentic commerce agent? Am I be able as a customer in the future, and we talked about that early on, am I able as a customer in the future to program my own agent with certain aspects and then say, okay, every purchase below 20 euro, I don't mind, fire it through, but if it's above 200 euros, then I need to have a proper check-in into that. So this is also something that we need in order to understand how much will governance affect the shopping experience here. And the third part is trust, because if I am currently looking at a shopping experience, either I go into a brick and mortar store or going online, then I'm in control. I decide what I do, whether it's in the progress of understanding what product I want, or making the purchase, tapping my phone on the cashier or handing out cash. I'm always in control of everything that I do. So I can trust the process, that when I'm exchanging money, I'm receiving the product. When I'm giving that away completely to the agent, how do we ensure that the customer still has the trust in the brand, in the process, and everything surrounding to that?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the entire, all kinds of processes will completely change because of this. And then, so we need to somehow create our own new habits, right? Like, I think I use the example of getting into a car. We never think about, you get into a car and you just start the engine and you go driving, and you just assume everything will work and everything is safe and everybody else is doing the same thing. And I guess this is something we have to achieve maybe also with AI agents.
Well, something that I would not want to say learn, but rather what I see every time when I'm working with AI is that we have a dependency in there, and we cannot implement great AI if the data is not there, and we cannot have great data if the processes are not good. So basically, yes, it is both sides of the coin. So you need to look into the processes in order to end up with a good AI. You cannot just go with AI and then try to agentify your process. So I always, when I'm in discussion with business units about that, I always go back to the question, if we are, founding MediaMarkt today in 2026, how would we do that? Knowing with all the things that are around there. Would we do it in the traditional way? Would we do it differently? And that kind of thinking is starting to, fire up great ideas about how to create a process. And so naturally we come up with a different process. And then that goes into the direction of it's not just about AI. So I do AI for a living. I don't want to hype out about AI, but it's also a lot more than that. It's the beginning of a digital transformation where you look basically behind every corner into your data, into your processes, and then in the end you will eventually end up with AI. But it's more to that.
Okay, well,
can I just build on it, because I love that point, and that's, I think, the biggest thesis and our belief is you need to reimagine the business from the ground up almost. And in many of the work that we have with the client, we don't, map out the processes and identify the pain point and try to fix here and there, but really almost on a blank sheet of paper, reimagine what would this function be, what would this domain be of the future with all what we know today.
Okay. It's fascinating. I have only more questions, but I also want to give the other panelists an opportunity. So, Crystal, if you hear this and then look at it from your perspective, like, so how can we approach this, or what should we do not?
Well, I very much like the mindset that Bastian expressed in his question. How would we found MediaMarkt if we would have to do it today? You can ask the same question to the legal framework. How would you design the rules if you would design them without all the long history today? Yeah? In academia, there's a question how to apply the rules on mistake. To agentic transactions, yeah? Contract law rules on mistake. Yeah? Vice de consentement en français, par exemple. But maybe that's even the wrong question, because that's trying to apply rules that were designed for human transactions to a scenario where there is no human in the loop at the decisive point. So maybe if you say, well, these rules are about risk allocation, and the framing is mistake, maybe you can have an appropriate risk allocation without this framework of mistake. Well, that would be if you would start from scratch. But of course, that's very difficult, and maybe that's not even possible. So therefore, maybe some kind of transition would be necessary. And I see basically two major structural shifts. And the first is vertical, and the second is horizontal. The vertical shift is, I would say, top-down in the agentic stack. Currently, we have a lot of rules that are focused on graphical user interfaces, on how websites have to be designed, where buttons have to be placed, where information has to be provided, and all this is based on the assumption that there is such a graphical user interface. But in agentic commerce, a lot of transactions will move one step down to the protocol layer, and not graphical user interfaces, but APIs will do the trick in a sense. And then the question is not how to integrate the legal requirements into a graphical user interface, but how to integrate it into the code of the protocol layer, into the universal commerce protocol, for example. That's the vertical shift that has to be done. And the second shift is on the timeline, and that's a horizontal shift. Currently, a lot of consumer protection rules focus on the magical moment when the contract is concluded. That's when the information has to be provided. In some cases, form requirements have to be complied with, etc. And but in an agentic transaction, there is no human at this point in time, because the transaction has been delegated to an AI agent. So the human in the loop is at an earlier point in time on the timeline. So that means consumer protection has to address this point. So we may see a shift away from contract law to, well, design requirements for AI agents, and that would be a kind of product safety requirements, or even fairness by design requirements for AI agents. For example, to ensure that I can set a limit for transactions, to ensure that possible conflicts of interest are being disclosed at that point, right? So these two shifts I see.
Also very fascinating, and only, I think, creating more questions. But I also see I've been a bad moderator because we're slightly over time. But I think, Brendo, that gives you the last word. So what are your reflections on what you have just heard? And we heard that we need the right data, we need good quality data, but we also see at the same time, I think we are competing with players from outside the EU. We see that, they are often, the front runners in the US, in China. They have more data than we have. So how can we overcome these hurdles and have a competitive AI-driven retail sector?
Well, I think you touched the most important point, because in my view, the data is really the central issue. Only second to capital, in the sense that we need more investment in development of AI. We need a more integrated financial market. But then also, if we look at the users of AI, those that also deploy AI, like may happen in the retail sector, the data is very important. And in fact, to streamline the complex legislation that we have, from Data Act, the Data Governance Act, the GDPR, I think we can do that without sacrificing our rules. In fact, as I'm working on the data omnibus, I think there is too much, maybe because it's politically more sensitive, but there is a lot of attention on the GDPR. But in fact, what we are doing on the Data Act, the Data Governance Act, to simplify the non-personal data to be used for various use cases, including the AI area, is extremely important. And I think that we need to concentrate a lot on this, because I think we can have a better access to data and a better control over our data, so that we can use it in the best way for advancing our objectives in the businesses, in the development of our activities. I think there are already some good, best practices that we can look at, and I think that organizations like EuroCommerce are important also for that, to in fact bring together different experiences and learn from each other, because in this area things are moving so fast that it's very important that we bring knowledge together and we learn from what it works and we discard what is not working, in fact.
Okay, thank you very much. So then I want to conclude this panel. So please give a big applause to these excellent panelists for a great discussion.
Thank you for your interesting insights. And for the record, you were a great moderator, Ilya. Don't be so hard on yourself. Now we've come to an end. For the closing remarks, I gladly invite to the stage once again the Director General at EuroCommerce, Christelle Delberg.
Thank you, and I will not hold you very long for after a very intense and fascinating afternoon. I'm very, very proud, actually, and very happy about the quality of the debates, the quality of the exchange, the different, the quality of the alignment as well, and also the various perspectives that were brought together during this afternoon. A fascinating journey about fair competition, the need for trust, and innovation. What we've got a few words out of this afternoon. We got a strong recognition for the role that we play as a retail and wholesale sector, whether that's for vibrant local communities, whether that's for consumers offering a shopping experience, relevant shopping experience, but also a strong recognition for the challenges that we are facing as a sector day to day. A very intense discussion on the impact of unfair competition, global unfair competition, and the need to take to get our acts together on a level playing field. Very interesting alignment on how to deal with the rules in particular for the millions of parcels that are coming in and creating unfair competition, risks for consumers, risks for retail, but also very fascinating discussions about how how to change the rules to restore fair competition. So thank you very much for our panelists there. Equally, the same thing in terms of ensuring the importance and the relevance of ensuring consumer trust. Ensuring consumer, you cannot operate a retail operation if you do not seek consumer trust. I think that is not sustainable over time. We got recognition for that. Consumer trust is essential for retail, and consumers need to trust the retailers. Retailers need to have a trusted relationship with consumers. So that was a very strong message as well that we got in the afternoon. The importance for both cases and afterwards of workable, implementable, enforceable rules is essential. There was also today was the presentation of our joint report with McKinsey on AI. Also, very interestingly, the transformation, it's not about the transformation that will happen. No, the transformation is underway. And it is about understanding the transformation underway, how this is working, how this is transforming the consumer journey, how looking into AI, agentic commerce is also changing the way we look at the transactions, the way we look at the regulation as well for our sector. I very much liked what you said, Hailey. It's about reimagining retail and what that means, what's the impact about the governance, the trusted relationships, the need for transparency. So a lot of discussion this afternoon, very much a lot of food for thoughts. At the end of the day, what will matter for a successful and more competitive retail and wholesale will be getting the regulation right. So ensuring the regulation is enforceable, it's workable, and it creates the incentives to continue to compete and remain competitiveness in a very global market. So on that note, thank you very much everyone for your participation, and we look forward to pursuing the conversation, whether that's online or in person or at a future event. Thank you so much.
Now, all I can do is invite you to the network drink that's in the same place where the lunch is, and maybe take a fresh breath here. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you.